All right, we should be live right about now. Chat, we're gonna take a couple minutes here as we're sort of starting to get things up and running. We'll take some minutes to let folks trickle on in, as well as getting some people available to jump in here. Make sure that we're not having any technical difficulties like our last stream that we started with, although hopefully everything that we had as a technical difficulty got sorted out at the start of last stream, because that was our first stream in like 3 years. So if anyone is in chat right now, if you all could let me know that the volume and all that kind of stuff is going great, that would be a huge boon. Make sure we get things started off on the right foot. Definitely gonna start here. For those who are just jumping in, today we're going to be taking Winota Snowball Stacks, my primer list for Winota, list I have not touched in a couple months, apart from some minor adjustments here and there. And then we're going to be essentially trying to update it for the modern age. For 2026, we'll be taking this deck, getting it ready to go. As I said, if folks could drop down in chat if they are able to hear, if audio is doing good, all that kind of stuff. Great first responses there. Super sweet. I'm not sure if potentially the stream delay is a little longer than I meant it for it to be, but that's okay. We'll figure these things out as we're going through. So other than that, how's everyone doing today? Everyone check in, see how folks are. Great. Everyone seems happy with volume, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, happy to be live again. I know I did the first live stream, as I mentioned, in a while, starting with the Royal Rumble Top 40 breakdown. Definitely going to be trying to do a little more live stuff here and there. Definitely not an every week kind of thing, but it's going to be one of those things where I'm going to try and jump in and do some live stuff and sort of add it to the roster here and there. But yeah, let's start talking about Winota Snowball Stacks. So as I said, I have not brought this deck to a tournament in a hot minute. The meta was really bad for it. And so now we're at a place where I think we can be a little bit more comfortable knowing that Winota's at least going to be performing somewhat decently. So you'll see I have currently my primer list up on one tab, which is the tab that you can currently see. Also, I didn't mention this yet, but if anyone can see a difference in camera quality here, I'm not sure if the stream would maybe make it a little bit fuzzier, but we finally got our brand new camera for the show, so should be a lot crisper moving forward for a lot of these things. So hope that is coming off nice here. I definitely noticed that it makes like a half-second delay on OBS, but I don't think you all should be able to see that, but who's to say? Either way, yeah, so we have our Winota Snowball Stacks primer list up right now. We'll also have the EDH Top 16 page up for Winota over the past couple months, because I think anytime you're making these sort of edits and things like that, it would be sort of foolish to not recognize the work that other folks have put into the archetype, and yeah, mention it there. We have 3 lists that did well recently at some tournaments, and then I also have the psychotic Scryfall search of every human in the Boros color pie, printed recently. It's ordered by release date and then filtered out for reprints, right? So they're not going to see any reprints anytime soon. But yeah, we're gonna be having fun with that. Hi are asking if we're going to be going to the boil. Yeah, we will be at the Land Go Boil this year. New Orleans is going to be super sick. Very, very excited to pop out there for sure. Gonna miss the comedian slideshow. Well, the funny thing is the slideshow on the Mind Sculptors had nothing to do with my setup, and just everything to do with like Riverside did not want to take the uploads for some particularly strange reason. All right, so we're gonna move over to the primer Winota list. So as you can see, last update was about 4 months ago, and it was a lot of cleaning up, right? Like nothing essentially super crazy as far as changes to the list, and there's definitely some edits that still need to be done. So I think when whenever I am working nowadays, right? So if I'm sitting down with a client, right, and I'm working in cEDH, right, and we're talking about like, hey, you have this list. What are we going to do to make sure that it's operating as clean as possible, right? What are we going to do to make sure that the list is able to perform as you would like it to, et cetera, right? So I essentially came up with this process that I've labeled as skeleton shaping, right? The idea is you take the skeleton of this deck, you strip it down to the bare bones, like what is it supposed to be at the end of the day? And then from there, you start adding those supplemental pieces that are going to give you more embellishment to the deck, that are going to allow you to essentially build from that skeleton and then get 100 cards by adding stuff that supports that core, that supports the essential idea of what you are working with in the baseline of this deck. So what we're going to do with this list is exactly that. We are going to strip down the deck, and we are going to essentially keep in the things that are absolutely necessary and take out the things that fall into the category of not being necessary, right? And then from there, we'll obviously build it back up after we strip it down, right? Essentially, it's a full process where we take everything down, bring it back up, right? To abbreviate what we're going with here, right? So, funny enough, I think this is one of those decks where certain pieces are going to seem so weird to consider core, right? But I think they're going to be, right? And so, for example, we start with our first card here, Ornithopter, right? And I genuinely think that Ornithopter is a core card in this deck list. I cannot tell you how many times over the years playing this deck that I've had like a Ranger Captain enter the battlefield and then ETB, put an Ornithopter in my hand and just ready to go from there, right? Yeah, shout out to Austin in chat, who definitely was actually the reason to inspire this current stream right now. As yeah, they'd asked the other day in our session like when I'm going to update Winota, and I was like, actually, I wanted to go live on Sunday. That's a great idea. So yeah, we're gonna keep Ornithopter in. I think Phyrexian Walker definitely goes into the category of like a little bit more ambiguous. I highly doubt I would be sleeving up a version of this deck without the Phyrexian Walker, if I'm being truly transparent on that sentiment. But that's one that while we are shaping that core, we can move it to the side for now. And actually, just to save us a little bit of time, I'm gonna go to the bulk edit feature here, and I'm gonna take everything in our sideboard, and I'm gonna put that into our considering board. And that way we can just have our sideboard be full of the cards that we push to the out of the deck essentially. And our considering board, if anyone's ever like taken the time to look at the considering board for Winota, this is a very old considering board, and actually I've trimmed this down, and so that's yeah. At one point that used to be upwards of like 230 or something like that. So Phyrexian Walker will move to the sideboard to start things off. Benevolent Bodyguard is a card that I have truly loved for Winota. It's going to be really hard, honestly, for a lot of these cuts because, cards like Benevolent Bodyguard are so effective in the right windows, and just being able to flip over a human that suddenly blanks all removal that your opponents have access to is really nice. But, once again, I don't know that we can officially lock it in as a core choice per se, right? So that's something we have to make those sacrifices when we're going through. Because, like, if we just sit here and just go like, oh, hey, everything's core because all of it looks great, then we're not going to really be doing much of anything with our time here today. And pardon me while I'm just moving a few tabs around just to make sure I'm checking in and make sure the stream's healthy and all that. Esper Sentinel, I think we would be fools to not play Esper Sentinel. It's so fantastic in the current Winota list and in every Winota list. Ginger Brute. Realistically, do I see myself playing without a Ginger Brute? It's hard to say. To be honest, I don't even know. Like, someone could tell me that there's a secret Ninja Turtles version of Ginger Brute that potentially is strictly better because modern card design that I completely missed, and I totally believe you. But in the meantime, we'll move Gingerbread to the sideboard. I think the Giver and Mother of Runes effects are insanely powerful. I think there's a reality where you play a version of this deck that is hypothetically outdated. These cards or they are outdated in general, comparatively. I don't think that we're at that point here. Actually curious to see if the other lists that have been doing well on Winota are playing. Okay, so we have Giver of Runes in this version. We have Giver and Mother, and we have Giver only in these. Okay, interesting. Very, very interesting to see the Giver split. But that does make sense. And I do want to shout out the pilots. So first of all, we have let me make sure I'm shouting out the right person in the right order. We have Gold Sabertooth's list, where he was able to top 4, I believe, a 60-ish person event. We have Scoopface, who I believe got 8th in a 50-something person tournament with Winota recently, and I believe it was like right after Gold Sabertooth's success with the deck list. And then we have Kinblood, who has been really, really doing well in the West Coast scene with Winota. And so, yeah, definitely want to shout these 3 out. As I mentioned, they're kind of like, if you jump up here, we have Kinblood, we have Gold Saber, and then Scoop is down here somewhere. And then I don't have Paula's list up, although they've been doing pretty well over in the Spanish league. But I tend to find that whenever I look at deck lists from that meta game, that while I can probably get cards and pieces, I honestly might as well just open it up. But I haven't particularly found that the meta is one that immediately jumps over and feels as comparable to, for example, looking at tournaments all over the US, right? At least for that particular meta, as I said in the past. So that's why I have the other 3 lists up there, but I'm happy to open up Paula's list at some point. Jumping back over to our deck list, I think Ocelot Pride, as awesome as Ocelot Pride is, I definitely don't think we can consider it core. It's a card that I really want to mess around with more, because I believe Ocelot Pride was printed right about the time that I kind of stopped playing this deck list as much, right? So there's already sort of this notion that it's kind of a big question mark for me, although my wife plays Winota all the time, and so it's a deck list that I get to see her test cards in, and Ocelot Pride does put in work, but it's also still a bit of an asterisk card in there as well. Signal Pest is one that I guess if you really gun to my head, I could consider Signal Pest core. It's been such an overperformer over the years that it would be really hard for me to dislike this card, being essentially flying, legally distinct flying, but the ability to anthem your entire team on a 1-drop is pretty crazy, and a 1-drop that specifically is colorless mana to cast. So for the time being, Signal Pest I think is going to stay in, and then it is one of those core cards that's yes, it is core, but I could see an argument to potentially move it to the side. Archivist of Ogma, we're not going to give up our card draw in this deck, and the fact that it is a non-human is huge. Cathar Commando, depending on the meta, this card's really awesome. This is a card that either puts in a ridiculous amount of work or almost no work at all. Now, that being said, I don't think I need Cathar Commando to be in the deck list, and there's also an argument that potentially it can be a Loran instead, which arguably it gets the job done without sacrificing the body, right? And the bodies are important in this deck list. Plus, Loran has the upside of being a vigilant body in a combat deck is not irrelevant, although 2-1 obviously a little bit on the fragile side there, but also the ability to hypothetically force a draw on an opponent if they're Oracle Consulting and they miss the fact that you have Loran, plus also it's some card draw for your deck, right? So there are niche implications there. Plus we have things in the deck list that care about drawing, right? So like Spirit of Labyrinth hypothetically, so if someone draws their card for turn and then you tap your Loran during their turn, hypothetically speaking, that's a way to be able to get some asymmetrical card draw in this deck. So I think Loran's probably I'm going to put it in the considering board for now because it wasn't technically in the deck beforehand, but I definitely think Loran has a high chance of oh, now there's 2 in the considering board. I didn't realize it was already in there. All right, well, all's well that ends well. Okay, great. So Cathar is going to go to the sideboard for the time being. Charismatic Conqueror. This card is so annoying. I am constantly irritated when I try to play this card because your opponents will always choose the decision that is the worst for you. And that part's like insanely frustrating. If you ever get two of them, it actually comes up with a pretty interesting interaction where you either make two soldiers every time, or they have to make it tapped and it doesn't matter and they still get the 1/1 counter, which is kind of funny. Or they still get the oh, actually no, it's not if you get two. It's if you have another tap effect, right? So yeah, it says whenever an artifact or creature enters the battlefield untapped and under an opponent's control, they may tap that permanent. Yeah. Okay, so they have to enter untapped. There's some dynamic where, like, if you're playing something that has to tap them, and I do think the having two of them thing comes up. Shout out to Niall from the Philadelphia Zine who mentioned that in his Kamal, Kumball deck list that he was messing around with for a little bit. There's some interesting stuff with like Charismatic Conqueror going infinite. But Charismatic Conqueror, on the end of the day, as I mentioned, it's a card I'm constantly frustrated by because your opponents are always going to make the best choices for them. And that means for me, I could never keep it core. And to be honest, I have a hard feeling that is not coming back in the deck list after being put to the side. Drannith. There was a period of time where people said that this card should be banned. So yeah, it's definitely not being cut from the deck. Aethersworn Canonist is our most mana efficient rule of law outside of High Noon. I'm so used to saying our most mana efficient rule of law, but that is not actually the case anymore. Grand Abolisher. I think Grand Abolisher just kind of has to stay. The ability, yes, for a Grand Abolisher to be on the battlefield and for your opponents to clone a Grand Abolisher is always a bit of a pain. But at the same time, you know, the fact that your combat is uninterrupted, right? Like that truly is such a powerful effect, and such an effect that, like, playing Stax, like if you haven't played combat-based decks in a multiplayer format, the ability for your turn to be left alone is so disturbingly vital. It's not even funny. So, like, yeah, Grand Abolisher stays, period. Loyal Apprentice, you'd really have to make a very convincing argument to me to convince me that Loyal Apprentice does not deserve a place here. It's a human that then makes non-human bodies. It's really efficient with your commander out. All aces all around. Ornithopter Paradise, very cuttable. That one will move over to the sideboard. Philia, Exuberant Shepherd. This is one that I'm a really big fan of. As anyone knows, I had that period of a couple of months, I want to say like 2 years ago, where I was just like putting Philia in every deck, and it did perform quite well. So it's not core, but it's definitely a really good card. I could easily see it slotting back into the deck list. Just as repeater removal, blanking things for your turn, all that kind of stuff. Phyrexian Revoker is so goated in Winota. If you haven't had a chance to play with this card in Winota, it's absolutely insane. The ability to so your hardest matchups by far are the Kinnons, the sometimes Rogthras, depending on if you can control their board state whatsoever. But that type of deck list is really, really difficult. The Thrasios grindy decks, right? And so having your Pithing Needle style effects for those decks is really, really huge too. Soulless Jailer, fantastic. Chat, what do you mean by it resets Winota? For Philia, I'm assuming is what we're referring to there. I'm not quite sure, but we'll check back in on that one. Soulless Jailer, fantastic Stax piece. Tough butt. Actually, I don't know if I agree that your opponent's resolving a Born Upon a Wind is something I'm really scared of in Winota, if I'm being honest, because you're playing Stax, right? Like, this is a rule of law deck. Like, that the dynamics that mid-range decks and control decks are scared of are not applicable to Stax decks. I think Stax decks are so fundamentally different in this format because you're essentially playing control with permanence. So I mean, silence. Yeah. Silence. Yeah, silence is very powerful. But yeah, you're playing control with permanence, right? And so when you limit the amount of spells your opponent's cast per turn, like, I don't care if my opponent resolves a Born Upon a Wind, because 90% of the time that's their spell for turn. So, like, what happened in the meantime? Now, if it goes Born Upon a Wind, channel Beseiju, blow up the Rule of Law, or channel Otawara, right? Like similar effects, then yeah, sure, maybe there's a conversation there. But at the same time, that's realistically not the situation we're going to be seeing in most scenarios. All that being said, back to Soulless Jailer. Permanent cards in graveyards can enter. So reanimation effects is not really something that we're dealing with quite a lot in the current metagame. It's very much a case of like the players can't cast things from graveyards or exile does come up pretty frequently when it comes to like breach style effects. This is also one of our very few anti-Atali cards, right? You can't cast non-creatures from exile. Yes, they can catch, the squee if they happen to have food chain squee, but a lot of the times it's really not the something that we have a lot of answers to, and I think Soulless Jailer puts in a decent amount of work. There are, as I said, weird niche cases where like it stops one thing but it doesn't stop another thing. But at the end of the day, Soulless Jailer hits enough relevant meta stuff that I think I would rather just have in the deck. And unironically, the amount of times I've had Soulless Jailer curves where you like hit this off an Ancient Tomb and then have a 0/4 attacker going into the next turn cycle that says you may not. Yeah, it's pretty nice. Chat question out there. What's Winota's answer for Toxic Deluge? I mean, to be frank, the amount of board wipes I am seeing in the format right now is at an all-time low. There was this period of time where everybody said, oh my God, Rogthras, blah, 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 blah. Like, we need to start playing board wipes and stuff like that. And then people just didn't. Like, that just was not and is not happening. So to be answering the question, like, we have a decent amount of flash effects. We have effects that can prevent board wipes, all those types of things. Sanctum Prelate on 3, as someone in chat just mentioned. There's a bunch of different ways to essentially say, like, board wipes can be invalidated. Once again, like, Aven Interrupter here is an actual answer. Sometimes Tybalt's Trickery, if you want to go into that like one Winota counterspell type of mentality, right? But yeah, board wipes are not like something I'm particularly worried about in the modern metagame right now. Most decks don't play board wipes, and depending on the archetype, there's probably a good reason for it. Now, what I will say, the thing I am actually very, very worried about is Culling Ritual, right? Because don't get me wrong, there are going to be times where we have, for example, like our Archon of Emeria and Winota, or like Eidolon and things like that, right? But there are many board states that exist right now. Pardon me. There's many board states that exist right now in which, a well-timed Culling Ritual can absolutely just time walk this deck multiple turns and then also just set someone up for a win. But I do think the nice part here is, as I mentioned, we do have a decent amount of permanence of 3 or more mana, so that's something we can at least like tech around and plan around, right? Moving on, Soulless Jailer, we're going to Tataru. Mana is so frequently and irritatingly a choke point for me with Winota that I have a hard time disliking Tataru. Once again, that high toughness ratio is something that we care a lot about in this deck, because it means you can get attacks without necessarily overcommitting our board state into blockers, into Bowmaster pings, into things like that. Card draw is rare in these colors, so the fact that this card replaces itself is not bad. And once again, it being a non-human is extremely appealing. If this was a human, I actually think I would not like this card in Winota. I don't want to flip into this. I do want to have this and then get flips off of it, is sort of my mentality with this one. Now, the absolute lack of any positive offensive stat line definitely means that the aggro aspects of this card are pretty weak, but for the time being, I think I would need a very compelling argument to not play Tataru. Also, I think I definitely skipped some 1-drops and went right to the 2-drops. Yeah, I definitely did, and I'm kind of okay with skipping those because they're so obvious in my opinion that they're core, right? Like Hope of Gearper, super evasive early silence effect, Sarah Ascendant. I mean, you want to flip into a 6-power creature, right? Whatever, we skipped around. That's fine. I don't know how we did that, but we did. Archon of Emeria. This is one of the best cards in the format at playing Stax. This is an insanely evasive body. We skipped over Voice of Victory. Voice of Victory is really interesting because do we need 2 Grand Abolisher effects is the question. And the answer is, I think yes. There was a period of time in this deck where I was playing Myrel, and the fact that we have Voice of Victory on a much more efficient body. Now, Myrel does have random upsides of soldier generation from time to time, and not being a dockside format anymore got rid of the downside of Myrel pretty hard, except for the real downside that Myrel is a 4-drop, right? So, as I mentioned, these Abolisher effects do come in a pretty healthy amount. Chat question about Hope of Gearper's silence effect. I don't know that I agree that it barely matters. I've had a lot of times where Hope of Gearper has very specifically locked out the player I am most concerned about losing to, going in for an entire turn cycle. It definitely can happen that you lock out the wrong person. I think that there is a lot of scenarios in which you have to activate Hope of Gearper on the right person at the right time, because there's times where you know, maybe you shut them down during their turn, but then you need that pieces of interaction and all that kind of stuff for the turn cycle, which can be tough. That's usually the nightmare scenario. So that's usually something that you have to have a conversation with that person about, being like, please give me a reason not to crack this Hope of Gearper, so that you can live until your next turn. So, but hope is something as I said, been really happy with over the years. So okay, moving back to our 3 drops. Archon Myria, that's a duh. Aven Interrupter, I think for some folks is maybe a bit of a question mark. I think at the end of the day, though, like, it's a flash flying body that shuts off Breach and is effectively a counterspell the turn you play it. And so curving this into a Winota is just like easy money. Mind Sensor, over the past like year or so, I've actually gone down on my affection for Aven Mind Sensor. But that being said, it's a white Stax evasive flying creature, so like obviously we're playing it here. It's something, maybe not an Abzan, but like, yeah, in these colors we play our Aven Mind Sensors. Boromir, still think Boromir's totally fine. Also, somebody mentioned board wipes earlier. This is one of your only ways to stop Culling Ritual, blowing up your creatures. So yeah, Boromir stays. Combat Celebrant's worth having a discussion about in like 2 seconds. In the sense that, yeah, I think like there's a world in which you go like, oh, I don't know if Rionia Combat Celebrant's the best combo in the world. Maybe that's not worth playing. But it's one of our truly only human complete combos, so yeah, Combat Celebrant stays. Delny is definitely not core to this deck list. It is a card that is in here for value, and it's really good at acquiring value, and to be honest, I've played very little with it in the deck. That doesn't mean to me that it's not worth including or that it won't come back into this deck list, but it's gotta be the case that, like, is this 3-drop worth the random card draw that we have trouble using in our hand anyways, or is it worth the random extra bodies? Like that's actually closer to being very worth it, is the random bodies that we get here and there, right? So that's worth calculating later on for sure. Rule of Law effects we keep, specifically non-human Rule of Law effects, no questions asked. Legion War Boss. This is definitely an older Winota card at this point, right? Like this card has been around for a while, and it's crazy to think that, it's a card that might not feel up to date with the metagame right now. Like we have other versions that exist, and actually I'm pretty sure the debate between this and our goblin our goblin guys, Cradle Howl Squad heavy, is worth noting. There's actually a lot of conversation here about Legion War Boss, which is sad because like the other problem is like the curve that existed with these just doesn't exist anymore, because it used to be the case where you used to go Mana Crypt, land, War Boss, second land, Winota, right? And that just doesn't exist at this current point, right? Chat asked about some of the new cards we're adding in. So right now we are stripping the deck down to the bare essentials, and then we're going to talk about additions a little bit later in the episode. So right now we're just cutting stuff from the actual primer list as of right now, and then we are going to build it back up as time goes on. Facebreaker, broken, never cutting it from this deck. Range Captain, broken, never cutting it from this deck. The Recruiters. Here's my hot take. I used to love the Recruiters. I think the Recruiters are so mid in this deck nowadays. I don't like the only reason Recruiter of the Guard, 100%, the only reason Recruiter of the Guard survived the last sort of culling that I did in this deck list and Imperial Recruiter did not, is because I have had at least 20, 30, 40 games where I have had Recruiter of the Guard jump into the battlefield and had Recruiter ETB, and I've gone and grabbed Solitude, and having that free piece of interaction for the turn cycle has kept me alive, right? And so to me, that's like a perfect example of a card that's like good, but maybe not core, right? And we're really trying to find the core of this deck list. Sanctum Prelate is a Winota GOAT, a Winota All-Star. You would have to give me a very, very, very long dissertation as to why to not play this card. I think it is probably one of the best cards to ever happen for Winota. Yeah, easy claps there. Simian Spirit Guide, I can't tell you how many times I have hard cast this card in Winota. It's perfect for your acceleration. It's unfortunately perfect sometimes when you just need a non-human. As I said, too many times, more than I would like to admit. So yeah, Simian says. Skyclave is one that I think is a perfect example of another one that is not core, but very, very good removal, all that kind of stuff. Oh, okay. I was going to say Slicer, not in my version, but then I forgot Slicer's front side is the 5-mana side. I always think the cheaper side is the front side. Alexios is really hard for me to justify removing ever, because what happens is whenever you get an Alexios or a Slicer, there becomes two separate games that your opponents have to manage. It's the Alexios Slicer game and the Winota game. And when you essentially go like, hey, here's this bomb, which is Alexios or Slicer, good luck, have fun. It's really hard for your opponents to go, okay, I have all of this removal and I can deal with Alexios and I can deal with Slicer, and I'm so ready to take on both angles at the same time. And truly, they often can't. So we find ourselves in situations where, where Alexios is just forcing them to play that mini game is so strong, and it's really, really hard to break out of it, in my opinion. So to me, these are core. I don't know, actually. I'm actually curious to see if the other deck lists are even on these, because like I said, to me they're so necessary. So we have Carlos's list is on Slicer, no Alexios. We have no Slicer, no Alexios out of Scoop Phase's list here, and then we have no Slicer, no Alexios out of Gold Sabertooth's list. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. To me, oh man, that's crazy to me. I just feel like those cards are so backbreaking anytime that they get flipped in or jump in or yeah, I don't know. To me, I think Alexios is great. I've considered an overperformer. I even had it when I was playing my Karlak deck, and it didn't necessarily like combo with Karlak per se, right? But like between X amount of damage per combat times multiple combats per turn, yeah, it gets pretty nasty. Blade Historian is a Winota staple. This literally, I remember all of us like actively celebrating when this card was printed for Winota. We were like, oh, hey, the perfect Winota card got printed. The times in which this is stuck in your hand, you are going to despise this card. You are going to look at this card and go, dear God, what have you done to my deck list? But every other time you're going to be like, this is sick, and I flipped into it, and all of a sudden these kind of middling attacks turn into lethal attacks real damn quick. Rick, Steadfast Leader, The Walking Dead's, or no, what is it? Magic the Gathering presents AMC's The Walking Dead's Rick Grimes is so good for this deck list. No, I will not be changing it to the in-universe version. This is Rick of The Walking Dead. Thank you. No questions at this time. Witch Enchanter, amazing free upgrade for this deck list. It's a human that has an ETB, destroy artifact or enchantment thing. We literally went on a whole conversation about how Loran is probably making it in this deck list. And so a Loran that can be a planes is great. We'll do that. Rionia, as I mentioned earlier with Combat Celebrant, it is one of the only human complete combos, and if you haven't seen a Winota board state with a Rionia, it gets pretty silly pretty quickly. Imagine a single thing like an Ornithopter and a Rionia, and worst case scenario, if you cast no instants, no sorceries, that is just a free hasty body every turn, right? And then Rionia only scales upwards, like it only gets better. So yeah, nothing but good stuff to say about this. Slicer, I just went on a whole rant about this. We're good. Slicer stays. Solitude, I how do you convince someone that a creature, non-human, that comes in and removes a creature, and yeah, like I don't know how you can convince me that this is not worth it. Lena is so broken when you flip into it. It's really, really hard to argue that it doesn't belong in this deck, because once again, if it flips into Lena, you essentially say, I'm giving you one turn. You give them a single turn, and if they don't deal with your entire board state in that one turn, the game is over, right? There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So it's really hard for me. Like I love cutting the clunky cards from this deck. I love cutting 6 and 7 drops from Winota. This one in particular, I have such a hard time passing on. Plus, we go back to our conversation earlier about Culling Ritual. This at least gets those creatures with power less than her protected, right? So Lena stays. Angrass Marauders, I put in for a little bit. Angrass can be insane. But that it's a cold day in hell when I consider this card core. I think it is very strong, but it is definitely not something I consider core. And the fact that it is genuinely so useless in hand makes me go, okay, let's use it as space for now, right? Yeah, honestly, I'm a little... Ooh, Moxfield's slowing down a little bit. That's okay. Sometimes that happens. Now, I like to let people know I have 1,300 decks on here, so sometimes my Moxfield's like, hey, brother, give us a minute. But yeah, I wish we had cut more from the creatures, right? I think there's definitely potentially some cards that like we can trim here and there. Did Spirit of Labyrinth actually get cut from the deck list? That's so interesting. Got to make sure that that's at least in consideration for moving back into the deck, because card draw is so busted right now. Okay, that's definitely worth noting. Let's skim through one more time. Actually, you know what? I think it's fair to say that of the two of them, Alexios is less core than Slicer. I think Slicer is 100% core. But let's at least put Alexios to the sideboard. I want to be a little bit more aggressive about this, just because. Oh, we didn't talk about Magus. I skipped right over Magus. Wow, I'm skipping around a lot today. Apologies. So Magus of the Moon is insanely impactful in the right environments, and one of the biggest benefits of this deck versus other decks in the format is the fact that the Magus being flipped into with Winota means no one can respond to it, right? They can't tap their mana appropriately. They can't float mana in response. There is no downtime between like it being revealed and your opponent's understanding what's happening with the board state, right? So yeah, it's just, yeah, Magus is just so good. Yes, there are effects in the format like Cryptolith Rite and Enduring Vitality and Smothering Tide and things like that, but at the same time, this is one of those things where, I don't suggest that everybody play Magus of the Moon, right? Because I think it is one of those cards where you really need to make sure you are playing these effects in the right windows. I cannot tell you how many times I have seen an irresponsible Blood Moon player Blood Moon and throw someone else the game because they just go like, oh, this will stop everybody. And it stops 2 people, but you needed those other 2 people. Right. Now, that being said, also, we are in an advent of Gaia's Cradle meta. Like, Gaia's is very important right now. Talon Gates is one of the few answers against your deck. Blood Moon effects feel pretty good. So Magus is going to stay. Shadow Skull Smashing is one of the more middling NBFCs that exist, but we like removal spells, and it feels pretty free, even though the rate's kind of dog water. So we will take it. Enlightened Tutor, I think is fine. I think it's fine. I think this may be a product of an older Winota generation, so I'm kind of inclined to like sideboard it for now, but it's fine. Silence effects, pretty broken. I don't think I'm playing all the ones that I should be in this deck potentially, but we can readdress that point maybe a little bit later on. Path, I feel pretty good on being on Path and Swords, and Solitude, that to me feels like a healthy amount of removal. Plus, I think we're on Touch as well. Yeah, and I like target removal. Target removal is very, very powerful. Red Blast is always a meta choice for sure, even though it is probably close to core. Flare of Fortitude, I would need a pretty good reason to not run it. Being able to... yeah, so it's your life total can't change. Permanents you control gain hexproof indestructible. Yeah, it's just sort of like a board protection anthem for free, right? Now, does that potentially mean that, something like... oh gosh, I'm actually forgetting. Brave the Wind. Is it Brave the Winds? Something like that. The one drop versions that do this, that don't require a sacrifice. Like, does that mean that those cards are technically better? I don't know. And that's a consideration for sure. Yeah. I mean, Pyroblast was not in the current deck list. Once again, we are just going through and cutting things away that are not technically core at this point, right? And we're going back from that point. Razorgrass Ambush, we're treating as a land, right? So it's 3 damage for just an extra removal spell, right? To me, it's another one that feels pretty free. MDFCs in this deck in general feel pretty free. And so I don't mind playing Razorgrass, either side of the Razorgrass. Deflecting Swat, duh. Right? Like, I think it's pretty obvious that Deflecting Swat's amazing in this deck list and should be considered insanely heavily. Yeah, it's very good. Our artifact package, let's go with the ramp parts of things. Chrome Mox, Lotus Petal, Mox Diamond, Mana Vault, Soul Ring. They're staying. These are the parts where we have questions. Vexing Bauble, over time, I am liking this card less and less, and I don't think of it as a Stax piece, which is where I think I was thinking about it when it first came out. So Vexing Bauble is going to go to the sideboard 100%. Arcane Signet, Talisman of Conviction are probably going to the sideboard. I think Arcane Signet might stay, but Talisman's probably going to the sideboard for the time being, because we're not really trying to play the Talisman game plan. And yeah, so now we go to our enchantments. These are 2 of the best Rule of Law effects ever printed. No questions asked there. I think Touch the Spirit Realm's insanely powerful. And what I like about Touch, and I like this about Touch and Solitude more than I like Swords and Path, right? Swords and Path are being played for their efficiency, for the fact that they're 1 mana, right? The nature of things means that we are going to keep those cheap removal spells, and they're going to save us in a lot of situations, right? Now, the things with Touch and Solitude is they allow us to continue playing our game plan, which is like, we're not trying to win with instants and sorceries, right? I think that there are a lot of situations where a lot of folks just sort of overly rely on the idea that like an instant is going to resolve in a Stax deck, right? Which is just, it's a lot less likely to do so. Now, a defensive spell is a little bit harder to fight against, right? But yeah, channel and creature spells in the stack specifically are going to be a lot better for that thing. But luckily, like, we're not really using removal selfishly a lot, right? We're just trying to keep ourselves alive for the most part with a lot of this removal. But occasionally there is a, clearing the blocker type sentiment here. The lands. Now, I don't know if it's me being too old school or what is. I don't like going less than 32 lands in Winota. After years of playing this deck, and I know it's been a couple years off of playing it, I don't want to go less than 32. I think the consistency that 32 lands provides... Now, I don't think these 32 lands are perfect, to be clear. I'm just not going to touch the lands until we have the deck list locked in, ready to go, ready to re-solidify as, like, this is the new list moving forward, right? So 32 is where I feel very comfortable with the deck list. I'm curious to see what their other recently performing lists are doing. So we have, like, 29, makes sense there. 29, sure. And I'm assuming maybe another 29? 29. Okay, cool. So everyone's on 29. Sure. That makes sense. Happy to be proven wrong. Chat's already calling me crazy. But the thing is, it's like, this is not 29 lands in Tymna Thrasios. This is not 29 lands in Tymna Crom. This is not 29 lands in freaking Plagon, right? Like, this is a Stax deck, right? Like we need to curve and make land drops here, right? That we don't have Mana Dorks, we don't have Gaia's Cradle, right? Our only form of acceleration is these 6, right? It's these 6. Ragavan, Facebreaker, Simian Spirit Guide, it's kind of it, right? We really, really are choked on resources in this deck here, right? So I am potentially the lowest I think I'm going to ever go is 30, if I'm being frank. And also notably, remember that a number of these are MDFCs too, right? So like it's not like 32 actual lands, right? Yeah, chat. I see you guys talking about the lands. I totally understand that folks have their strong opinions on it. I think that we need to make our land drops, and so I'm gonna keep 32 for the time being. If we really, really run into stuff, and if while we're testing things and all that kind of stuff, the hands are flooded like crazy, then sure, happy to readjust accordingly at that time. But in the meantime, also notably, right, like not all of our lands are just lands, right? Like look at how many lands are spells in this deck, right? We have Blinkmoth Nexus, which is a land that turns into a body, right? We have Cavern, which is a control land, right? We have Command Beacon, which puts Winota back into our hand for cheap cost. We have Removal Spell on a land on top of the 3 MDFCs that also have additional effects, right? You have Sekenzin, which can be uncounterable bodies on a land, right? You have Talongates, removal spell on a land. You have Sunbaked Canyon, which is a recantrip if you need it to be, if you have too many lands, for example, right? Which has definitely happened in the past, and I get that part, right? Okay, moving on. So we have our 81 cards here. I think a lot of these I feel very good about considering core. I think there's some arguments, for some of the guys up here that are like not necessarily core, right? Like Soulless Jailer, I had a hard time like considering hardcore. But at the end of the day, I think a lot of these should be considered core. Maybe Mother of Runes, I think, is a conversation potentially. I know some other folks were not on that one, and I definitely hear the reasoning behind it. Because like you don't really want to flip into a 1/1 very often, right? So yeah, now we're going to go to additions, right? Things in red white that are added recently that we want to throw into the deck that'll make the deck more consistent, right? Someone in chat mentioned earlier, Redirect Lightning has been printed since the printing of this deck, or since the last time I messed with this deck list, right? So like that to me is just one of those cards that we add to the deck, feel really good about it, and are happy with this as a core list, right? And yeah, we can definitely take that and go from there. Moving on, there's been a couple other ones. I think to the sideboard, we're going to add some cards now that are... Yes, so, okay, really, really glad to see some folks bring this up already. I did want to talk about this card, because this is one that I used to absolutely despise. So this is Aura Touch Mage, right? It's in our considering board as of the right now. Well, chat, remember, if an MDFC is considered core, it's because it's a land, right? That's why it's considered core. So, Aura Touch Mage, right? When this creature enters, you search your library for an Aura card that could enchant it. If the creature's still on the battlefield, put that Aura card on the battlefield, attach to it. Otherwise, reveal the Aura card and put it into your hand. So, this card is a 2-card combo. And I'm going to move these to the side because we're going to be talking about them together with Breath of Fury. And the idea is, Breath of Fury comes in. If you hit somebody with Aura Touch Mage, you sacrifice the Aura Touch Mage, you get another combat, right? I think from feedback that I've heard from other pilots, this combo is just effective enough that it doesn't matter that it doesn't always go infinite per se. It's the fact that it threatens that if there is a situation where someone is open to any degree, essentially, you get that extra combat, right? And the thing is, you have token makers in the deck, right? You have evasive token makers in the deck, right? Things like Loyal Apprentice making flying Thopters, all that kind of stuff, right? So you can chain combats over and over with this card. And I think Breath of Fury and the Aura Touch Mage are probably just good enough nowadays where I am considering them as potentially being thrown in for the list. And a lot of folks, I know, like when I was talking to Carlos, he mentioned that like this is something he wins with very, very frequently in this deck list, right? So it's something that I am taking very seriously. I'm actually curious to see if the other okay, so yeah, the other deck lists were all on it too, except for everyone else is on it. Which to me is a really, really positive upside, right? So we're gonna throw it in. Yeah, I think, even if it is just that one combat, sometimes that one combat is genuinely all that you need. It can really, really add up to provide a lot of value there, right? Yeah, I see that. Man, I really do kind of like I don't know if it's like 2-cope, but I do kind of not hate the Ornithopter Paradise. That's something I'm definitely going to consider moving forward. Yeah, so just real quick to refresh chat, because it's been about 40 minutes since I think I've talked about these folks. So there are 3 other deck lists that I'm referring to here, which are Carlos Sanchez's list, who he's been doing really well on the West Coast. Tim Gold Sabretooth, who recently top cut a couple tournaments with this deck, and Scoopface, who also got 10th or 9th at a 60-ish person tournament. So these are all folks that I'm just have their list up as reference because they all have done well with the deck relatively recently. Carlos, I believe, doing the most consistently well a lot over in the West Coast with this deck. So definitely someone whose advice I'm taking very, very efficiently or taking to heart. Right. I think it's perfectly reasonable. So yeah, definitely something we're going to be referencing as we sort of go through here. So we mentioned that. We mentioned Clarion Conqueror. So Clarion Conqueror is weird for this deck list, right? Because I think it's worth it, right? I genuinely do. The thing with Clarion Conqueror is that Clarion Conqueror is so good at saying no that it's also just so insane at saying no to us too, right? But I think that's okay. And it's a 3/3 flying body, which is pretty damn good. The biggest issue is shutting us off of artifacts is really, really hard. Like, we have Facebreaker, we have Ragavan, we have all of the artifact ramp that you saw, right? Like, treasures are not an inconsequential part of our game plan. We also have creatures with activated abilities. Not a whole ton, not a game warping amount, but they do exist in the deck list. And I think it's just one of those things where you play this card and yes, it stops you, but the things that it does to your opponent's board state are so truly massacreish that it's so truly oppressive that it does not matter for anything. Like, I think because at the end of the day your objective is to beat your opponents over the head until they die, that it does not matter that Clarion Conqueror can be a little bit inefficient. I think you're just supposed to. Is really the abbreviation of this. Like, I think you're just supposed to play it, which is kind of funny. So the dragon makes it. And also, I think we're not going to stand for one of the more mid arts. Definitely going to do the very, very cool one. Anyways. But yeah, definitely think that the Clarion Conqueror is just one of the reasons to just play the deck, honestly, nowadays. Cool. Moving on. Other things we're looking at for additions. I kind of like going into the search here. You know what? I think I'm willing to bend on a land, he said with resounding confidence. I think I'm willing to bend on one land here, and I think it's Talon Gates because it's definitely one of the clunkier ones. I don't know, though. Talon Gates is so good when it's good. I don't really want to cut one of our basics. Don't want to cut Command Beacon either. Blinkmoth is already a sacrifice that we're making in some other spots. All right, let's cut the Talon Gates for the time being, because when are we holding up 4 mana in this deck realistically? Now the nice part is if we need to go like play Talon Gates, clear a blocker, go to combat, that part's really attractive. But in the meantime, let's potentially move this one to the sideboard here. But I don't feel particularly enthused about that choice. I think it's like one I'm going to stick with for the time being. Okay. Starting to get some suggestions in chat. Stadium Headliner. I don't think I know that one. Oh, this little guy. Yes. This dude is way too squishy, unfortunately. And the thing is, and to note, right, we really want to be careful because this happens a lot with these combat decks where, you know, these types of effects, mobilize and stuff like that, amazing for decks like Jetmir, where it's consistently checking the static. Oh, chat, that's a good suggestion. Barbarian Ring. I think Barbarian Ring, unfortunately, you're never gonna have Threshold in Winota. I just don't think it's a thing. But anyways, Stadium Headliner. Unfortunately, you get these extra bodies in combat, right? And so they're not gonna trigger Winota, and I don't think that they're really gonna to make it. Unfortunately, and even if so, like I don't really want to play a creature just to pay 3 for it to be remove a spell later down the line, right? I saw some folks asking about lightning. Oh god, I forgot that's a popular word here in Magic. I'll phrase lightning like this. I like lightning more than I like Angrath's Marauders, right? But I don't know that means that lightning is good enough. Because it's amazing when it gets flipped in. When lightning's come to play, it's also very awkward with double strike. Well, not very awkward, I should say. It's a little awkward with double strike. It's actually awkward if you give your whole team first strike with Rick. That's actually the time when it's the most awkward. I definitely think lightning is a consideration. I definitely think lightning is powerful. Yeah, but we also have to be careful because like these kind of cards are so bad in hand, right? Like it's I don't know about so bad, but like they're really bad in hand, I think. Yeah, we're gonna move that one to the sideboard for the time being. I think it's worth considering though. I also think the more I think about it, Phyrexian Walker just you're supposed to play this card in this deck. I just don't think there's any question in my mind about the fact that you're supposed to play that card. But we'll move on past that. We'll talk about some other additions here. Yeah, Kinscare. That is one that we are definitely adding as far as new Boros cards here, right? Kinscare Sentry. Whenever it attacks, you may put a creature of mana value X or less from your hand to the battlefield tapped and attacking, or X's number attacking creatures you control. You drop a Grand Abolisher. You drop a very powerful card of any capacity. You drop. The thing is, once again, we have another situation here where it's like, I mean, realistically, you attack with this card and you drop in a Stax piece that your opponents weren't ready for. You want to make sure that you're attacking in a way where that card dropped in is not going to blow out your own game plan here, right? And also, it's, you know, it's a middling body on its own, right? It's actually probably better in decks that want to like cheat in a Grand Abolisher and then combo off, but that's fine. I think we're still okay to have this card as a new addition here. Speaking of new additions from our trip into Lorwyn, we're playing Hexing Squelcher. You don't care if your opponents have this card in this deck because hopefully your Stax pieces will be out. And Ward pay 2 life is actually relevant for this deck. And the fact that that's actually going to be somewhat defensive in this deck is kind of funny. And the other part of it is like, absolutely leave my Winota alone. Leave my Stax pieces alone. They are resolving, right? Like that is genuinely something so good here. The fact that it's like a 2/2 only and doesn't really have good evasive stats is actually its biggest downside here, right? But yeah, this is totally reasonable here. Chat asked about Kirill. Kirill only will copy a single trigger for Winota, so it's definitely not worth it. It's quite expensive for a lot of things, right? So yeah, Squelcher definitely good. You know, so someone mentioned politicking in chat. It's like, yeah, there are going to be times where like you don't need to yap because you have Hexing Squelcher, right? Just the ability to be like, hey, Do I still think this card is atrocious? Do I still think it's one of the worst things to happen to the format in a long time? Yeah, absolutely. Am I going to play it because we have it? Yeah. Right, like that's genuinely where we're at, right? Those are some interesting additions. Yeah, I just because I don't like a card, it doesn't mean, and I think it's bad for the format, doesn't mean I'm not going to play it. That would be crazy to just choose to not play a card that is broken in your deck because you're like, they shouldn't have printed a card. A lot of people are asking about anti-enter the battlefield effects. I don't really see the appeal right now, if I'm being honest. I think some people might be scared of Thassa's Oracle, I guess. Is the idea there for that? I just don't understand really what we're worried about with anti-ETB stuff. Like this deck has 1,000 answers for decks like Atali, right? I'm not really seeing the appeal of an anti-ETB creature. To be honest, the more I'm looking at Kinskier Sentry, the less I really think this card's actually that good. But I think it's worth testing, which is something. Also, to any other Winota pilots out there, I don't know if Jolly Balloon Man's been tested, but it feels like that's maybe a card that we're sleeping on as far as Winota pilots are concerned. So I might put that in the sideboard. And that's also like another really... Ooh, I don't know how to spell balloon, apparently. I do, I promise. I shouldn't type in the second L. Oh, good. It's already in my considering board. That's great. So it's a card I've been thinking about more and more, for sure. Ooh, no, nice call out, Chad. I did not add Arena of Glory to the deck list since the last time I played it. The pathway probably, we don't need a pathway. That can be an Arena of Glory. Happy to get some of my, it's a card I can see activating like very rarely, if I'm being 100% honest, but I think that's okay. Okay, a lot of people asking in chat about Spider-Punk. There's no world in which I'm playing Spider-Punk in this deck. There's no world in which I'm going, hey, defense grid pass to my opponents. That's pretty insane. That being said, damage can't be prevented is a problem, right? Like we do have to worry about the one rings, right? I don't know what our real answers for that are, if I'm being frank. But it is an issue, for sure. It's a medium-sized issue, but it's an issue, right? Sunspine Lynx is probably one of the closer ones, right? Your opponents can't gain life, while players can't gain life, right? The damage can't be prevented, and when it enters, deals damage equal to the number of non-basic lands. Is it to each player? Okay, yeah. I mean, so it's a burn spell and a damage anti-preventer. I think I'm going to considering board it. Yeah, we're not doing this. Folks, stop asking. We're not doing this. I've seen this like 16 times in chat. It's not happening. It's just like this is the quickest way to concede a game of cEDH I've ever seen. Wild Slash is considerable, funny enough, because you have Winota. And so, it's not good, but it's not bad. It's a consideration, throw in the considering board. But that's like really if we're worried about Winota, or worried about like one rings, right? Which I'm not worried about. Don't get me wrong. But I don't really see much else here that I'm like, oh yeah, this is gonna solve our. Yeah, Bone Crusher Giant. I think we're okay about Bone Crusher Giant. Frostdawn doesn't actually stop the thing that we're here for, which is damage prevention. Right? Well, it doesn't give us anti-damage prevention. So yeah, we'll head out of this zone here. But that is a good important point. Yeah, there's definitely a lower amount of one ring for sure, but a lower amount in zero doesn't always have the same correlation there. Chat asking about Reconnaissance. Reconnaissance is really interesting. It's a powerful card. Don't get me wrong. It's for a low investment too, which is kind of cute. I have found in the past that you just don't need it. It's not that it's bad, you just don't need it, is really the idea of the plan there. Yeah, it's if there are board states that are coming up, though, in which you're like, oh man, I keep having situations where I can't attack in with my creatures, then like I'm perfectly happy to look into playing this card. But that's also one of the reasons why Delny was being considered as well, right? And actually, I that's really funny. When I did end up cutting Delny, I did not mention the fact that like this part of Delny I keep underestimating, and I did forget that was happening. So it's kind of worth considering, honestly, because of that reason alone. And almost like negligibly, like the double triggers are sick if they happen, right? But I kind of feel like maybe that was a part that we should be more focused on with Delny. So I think Delny actually makes it back in from the sideboard. Avalanche of Sector 7. I'm glad someone brought that up. I had some Stax friends bring this card up, and I'm interested about this. So it's a Menace *3. Its power is equal to the number of artifacts your opponents control total, like combined, which is in cEDH often pretty chunky, pretty hefty there. Then whenever an opponent activates an ability of an artifact they control, it deals 1 damage to that player. So there's a couple niche things here, right? Like it is a clock on opponents who are trying to win with breach stuff. It is a anti-smothering tithe piece, which especially if we are trying to play things like Magus of the Moon, right? Like Avalanche becomes pretty attractive for that. I feel like we're sleeping on this card. Huh. Yeah. I mean, it's another human, so we have to be careful of our human count, right? But to me, this card feels like it gets out of hand pretty quickly. I guess the nightmare scenario is like people only have a couple artifacts, but even then, even if it's like a 4-power creature with Menace for 3 mana that then incidentally pings whenever they're dealing anything with artifacts, right? Like it's not just sacrificing, it's not just yeah, this is actually pretty nice. That's a good call out, Chad. I really like this card. I think I'm actually gonna throw this in. Go Final Fantasy, throwing in some powerhouses here. Very fascinating. I actually don't think I was thinking about this card as much as I should have been. This card's actually pretty sick. That also reminds me of, oh god, what is the name of the card? It's a 2-drop that does Sardian Avenger, right? Is that? Yeah, but this is only when an artifact an opponent controls is put into the graveyard. It deals a damage to that player. But it does get +X+O, which is the number of artifacts to control. It is an X1, though, which is the tough part, but it does have First Strike and Trample, which is pretty funny. That's one to considering board. I've played it in other combat-based decks, too, and it's put in quite a lot of work. People are asking about Go-Go. I think Go-Go is particularly bad in Winota. Unless I'm mistaken. So, at the beginning of combat turn, you may have Go-Go become a copy of another creature you control. Okay, so it's a 4-drop that becomes a copy of Winota, right? So, like, yeah, you get double Winota triggers, but then they're hasty humans and you don't get Winota triggers off of them, right? So, like, if I'm going to do something like this, why wouldn't I just play a Roaming Throne, right? Which I believe Scoop Phase is on, right? I think it's just Scoop Phase, but yeah, he's on Roaming Throne in his list. I think he's the only one who's on that. But yeah, I don't think Go-Go's really even worth considering, if I'm being frank. Like Roaming Throne I can at least consider, right? Because it's a Winota copy that triggers Winota, which is kind of funny. And to be honest, kind of funny that we haven't considered that before. Chat asked why we aren't on Phyrexian Sensor. Let's show y'all right now. You may be saying to yourself, this is the best Rule of Law deck in the format. Why aren't we playing this creature Rule of Law that would trigger Winota? That's the one. That sucks real bad. That's really, really bad for us. If you have any treasure creators, if you have anything like that, this it just makes you put egg right on your face. And it also stops your own infinite combos. So yeah, kind of rough for that reason. As much as I like Phyrexian Sensor, it shoots you in the foot too often. Now it's not like we're doing Kiki combos anymore, but it does stop our Rionia Combat Celebrant combo, right? So we'll considering board it, but realistically, it's kind of impossible to play, unfortunately. Yeah, someone in chat did suggest Knuckles. I'm at sort of a crossroad with Knuckles because I feel like with Knuckles, this card is actually insane if anyone hasn't gotten the chance to play this card. Yeah, I mean that's actually where my this card's actually kind of insane. For no, full fat mayo, the Rionia Combat Celebrant literally does not work through Phyrexian Sensor at all because your creature will come in tapped. And so therefore your copy of Combat Celebrant will not be able to go to combat. It will not be able to exert itself because it's a tapped creature, right? So it completely shuts down your Rionia combo. Yeah, so back to Knuckles. Knuckles is really busted. My only downside for playing Knuckles right now, really, like my really only downside I can see of playing this card is one, curving with this thing in double red can be a little clunky. It can be. That's not a huge one. The other thing here is that the thing is we just added Clarion Conquer, right? So it is just another thing where we're shooting ourselves in the foot for that anti-synergy, but is a double strike, trample, hasty Winota trigger with upside potentially still worth all of that? I don't know. Like, it's maybe, you know, very considerably. So I'm at least going to put it in the sideboard because I think it's extremely real. And to be honest, I am very high on this card. Doesn't Combat Celebrant untap the copies during the exert trigger? Okay. So if you have the Phyrexian Sensor out, so you have a regular Combat Celebrant with Rionia, sure. You make a copy of Combat Celebrant that comes in tap, sure. So the real Combat Celebrant has to go into combat and exert to untap the fake Combat Celebrant. Okay, so you start chaining the untap ones. So yeah, that let me double check how Combat Celebrant works here. Because if that is the case, then you might be right on the Combat Celebrant thing. When you untap all other creatures you control. Okay, yeah. So you're right. It does take a turn off the combo there, but yeah, it's still pretty clunky. I will say Phyrexian Sensor definitely was a lot worse in the deck when we were playing Kiki combos as well. That being said, I still really hate the idea that all of our token makers are then completely shut off by Phyrexian Sensor, right? It's pretty rough because we want hasty Winota triggers, right? Yeah. That being said, still clunky for that very reason. Yeah, we talked about this a little bit. Howl Squad Heavy. Is a card that's on our considering board right now. I actually don't know if this is better or worse. I think Legion Warboss is actually better because the Mentor trigger is probably better than this card eventually hitting max speed. Like, this feels very Christmas landy to me. Other goblins you control have haste is not a super high upside in my opinion because it's really affecting like Hexing Squelcher. That's it, you know. Yeah, not sold on that one quite yet. I'm actually curious, is anyone playing Lena? No, I don't think anyone else is playing Lena, are they? No, wow, that's crazy. Ugh, but Lena's so good. Oh man, that's funny. Dang. Right, Lightning's in our sideboard as of right now, I believe. Yeah, okay, cool. Speaking of the considering board, let's start going through and seeing if there's anything to pull out of there from the old stuff. It's worth talking about. Now this is years of Winota teching, so do forgive some of these choices. Some of them are definitely dated. Agate Instigator probably not doing much of anything. The Strike Leader. This is probably worth considering. I'm going to move that up to the sideboard too. A Johnny we tested over time, and that one is totally like middling essentially. It was like decent in the games where it worked, but like it just didn't do enough. Unfortunately, Arabella, funny, bounty agent. Yeah, okay, some of these are all a little comedic. Cliffside Rescuer is one that I've enjoyed over time because I like my Winota protection. I saw a lot of folks asking about Dauntless Dismantler. I think the card's a little too slow for the modern metagame. I do. I think it does some interesting stuff, but it leans on the too slow slide for me personally. So I just don't think it does enough for disrupting your opponents there. Deep Gnome Terramancer, I highly doubt this thing's going to proc as much as I would like it to. You could maybe make an argument later on. I'm open to it. Don't necessarily agree at this point. All this stuff I'm feeling pretty good about. Just powering past. Spirit Labyrinth, as I said, we need to consider. I want to take a second to talk about Thalia. Because the time in which Thalia effects used to be like dominant in this deck is still not necessarily not where we're at right now. The problem is that Thalia effects don't do a lot against your worst matchups, which are the green decks, right? The green decks can just look at a Thalia and kind of laugh, right? Your Sisseys, your Kinnons, right, are especially, I think, your hardest matchups for this deck list. And for me, Thalia doesn't really do much against those, right? So yeah, I think I'm answering my own question here by thinking about this card, but I think it stays in the side for the time being. I was told by Gold Sabertooth that this card is actually a house, and that I'm totally sleeping on this card. And I really believe that that's correct because I reread it after we had like a nice conversation about it, and I kind of get it. So as it enters, you look at an opponent's hand. So first of all, you get a free peek at a hand, right? Which is not bad. Spells your opponents cast with the chosen name cost 2 more to cast, right? And activated abilities versus with the chosen name cost 2 more to activate unless they're mana abilities, right? So you get to go, all right, flip this over. Name Thrasios, for example, right? So you get to look at the Thrasios player's hand. Doesn't mean you have to name the card in the hand, right? You can name any card, right? And so all of a sudden you go, all right, well now your Thrasios activations are 6 mana, right? Things like that are pretty sick. Or, there's a breach in hand, make it cost 4, right? That kind of thing seems pretty decent. I'm gonna considering or sideboard it for the time being, but it's one I want to definitely take a look at and pay some respect to for sure. All right, cool. We kind of powered through a lot of this stuff. A lot of stuff's like old Winota stuff. Yeah, y'all remember the Goblin Sharpshooter days? I do. Lauren, we're going to move up to the sideboard. Lightning's already in the sideboard. House Squad we already talked about, and I think it's worse than Legion Warboss, like we said already. Censor we'll at least put to the sideboard for the reasons that we kind of talked about earlier. Bellringer is not really doing anything unless we're doing Weird Balloon Man stuff, but even then we would need to change our deck composition. So the initiative creatures, which is why you're seeing them highlighted here, they were absolutely just ridiculous when I played them in Karlach. So part of me was like, are we sleeping on these in Winota? And I don't necessarily know that I have the answer, but a part of me is very interested in testing an initiative style package. So it would be like Caves of Chaos, White Plume, Seasoned Dungeoneer, as you can see here, right? And then probably like Ephemerate in the 99, which is fine because Ephemerate's actually a card that I feel really strongly about for Winota because you don't need Winota in combat, so you can always flicker your own Winota. You can use Ephemerate to flicker your own Stax pieces. And you can also use Ephemerate to essentially it's the same thing as like blanking removal. But I'm not convinced that those cards don't have a place. And so it's something I definitely want to spend some time exploring as we kind of move forward. Wandering Rescuer is another one where I think your tap creatures having hexproof is pretty attractive for a 5-drop. It's one that I never got the chance to test, but I feel like maybe is underplayed in this archetype. Everything else we've really, a bunch of crazy top end stuff that we don't really need to talk about. AM Arrow, I was so convinced was the next big thing in Winota. I really, really was. I was so convinced because it comes in, it's a removal spell, and you get the Monarchy, and it has double strike, but I just don't think it does enough, sadly. So yeah. Gamble, wheel, all that kind of stuff. I don't miss any of this. Wins maybe. But yeah, that's where we're at with that. Red Blast is already in the sideboard. As I mentioned, Ephemerate I wanted to put to the sideboard. Wild Slash I also want to put to the sideboard for the reasons we talked about with the One Ring. I don't think it's insane. I do think that there is a reality where we go into something, a couple things actually. So like a Tybalt's Trickery style card where, because we're on these rule of law effects, it's nice to be able to slow our opponents down, shut them out of interacting here, and then delay a Best Fireball. I think just because of the advent of all these like Cradle decks, but I don't think those are bad matchups as much as they might seem to be. I think like, as I mentioned, Sisay and Kinnan can be bad matchups, but I think the Cradle decks are much scarier matchups. So I don't think we need to go down this rabbit hole particularly. Then as far as artifacts are concerned, I think we're pretty good. There's an argument for Lightning Greaves at any point in playing this deck because Winota just being protected is good, period. As far as enchantments go, Rest in Peace probably is close, I want to say. The Siege, I know we talked about a little bit earlier. Having double Winota triggers or a thing that makes a hasty goblin every turn is kind of exactly what the deck's trying to do, but it's so expensive. It's so expensive. Someone in chat asked about Calamity's Wake. I don't mind Calamity's Wake. I think Calamity's Wake is really strong. The problem is we only can afford so many 2-mana instants in a deck like this, and I don't know that this makes it worth it, right? Like, I don't know. I think if you're going to play any silence effect in addition to the ones we're already on, it's going to be this one, but I don't know that that's the one. It's so good though. It's at least worth sideboarding. The fact that it's not even in my considering board is kind of crazy for sure. Okay, so I had someone in chat asking about Raphael like 600 times, so I'm gonna check which ones we're talking about for that. I believe the Night Watcher was the one we were talking about. So let's talk about something real important here. Unfortunately, Sneak is really, 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 really bad in comparison to ninjutsu because you have to bounce a thing and then pay the sneak cost, and it has to resolve. Sneak is a way of casting a spell off the stack, therefore invalidating any real appeal that this card would have for me, to be honest. A Second Blade Historian is not the worst, but this card just is so expensive. So yeah, no, I'm good. I am all set on that one, personally speaking. Okay, I think we're good to move off past some of these turtles, and move past them. Okay. Yeah, so I think what we're gonna do at this point here, chat, is we're going to run a little use one of the many beautiful Raph and Leo. Okay, so Raph and Leo, that one is worth talking about, and I highlighted this on the Mind Sculptors set review, which I believe one of our lovely friends is playing. Yes, it is Carlos is playing Raph and Leo, and yeah, if you curve this, it's pretty good. Like, I don't think it's bad. Like, the fact that you get to go, okay, play Raph and Leo on turn maybe 2, right? And then go play Winota, get 1 combat, 2 combat. Like, it's hard for me to dislike it. To be honest, I'm very interested in testing it, if not just playing it right away. I think it's really, really good. And it's so funny because I'm like, oh yeah, cards like Hope Gearper and Signal Pest are so good, and blah, blah, blah. Like Kinscare Sentries, it feels like it makes a lot of sense here, right? And then you look at modern design like Raph and Leo, and you're like, oh, that's just bonkers in this deck, right? To the point where I'm like, I don't even know why I'm bothering putting it in the sideboard. Like, I think it just makes sense in here. Like, I think you're just supposed to play Raph and Leo. The other thing too that we have to be very cognizant of is we got to pay attention to the creature human versus non-human split, but that's going to be when we start to fine tune at 100 cards type of thing. But let's run those comparison pages, and then we'll go back to if things don't come up when we talk about Okay, actually, there's one in here that I think is very funny, chat, that I want to look up, and I got to know what the heck you are talking about. What is this Raging Yeti card? Okay, bad start. We're looking at a 6-mana Final Fantasy. Beam combat your turn, choose one. Gain 3/0 and trample. Okay. What? Chat, why are we suggesting this? We are not going to be playing Umaro Raging Yeti in this deck. That's crazy. I was really ready. Yeah, chat mentioned like Rite of Flame and Jessica's Will style cards. They're okay. The problem is that like you're a Rule of Law deck, right? So you go like Rite of Flame in the first couple turns, awesome. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. But then you start to wait until later, and then you hit a place that it's they're dead cards in your hand. They literally will have zero effect on the game whatsoever. So yeah, that's kind of my issue with them. Oh, not playing Knuckles is hurting me. I'm not gonna lie. I feel like Knuckles does make the cut here. It feels really close. But the only really big issue with Knuckles is that it fights for Winota on the 4-drop slot. And I will say too, if we are lower on token generators, then a card like Phyrexian Sensor does get better. We are definitely a lot lower on token generators than we were way back in the day. I can't believe I'm actually thinking about Phyrexian Sensor. That's kind of nuts. It just makes Reunion useless, though, in a lot of situations. It also makes Aura Touch combo a lot harder, but that's fine. That's something to consider, actually. I'm actually more considering Phyrexian Sensor, funny enough. Okay, one more hot take from chat, and then we're jumping over to comparing the deck lists. Okay, Commander Sophia Daguerre was, I believe, suggested. Destroys a legendary permanent, makes a junk. I'm not seeing where the appeal is for this one. This is much worse than like Skyclave Apparition. Yeah, okay. All right, chat. No more suggestions for the time being. We're gonna go comparison to the other deck lists. Harsh Mentor is way too slow. I know some people have mentioned that a couple times in chat. 2 damage is not a preventative enough amount of damage for this deck list. All right. All right, this is Carlos' deck list, and I mentioned Carlos is definitely the one to really highlight because Carlos has been crushing it out on the West Coast with this deck list, right? Really been the person, I believe, took this deck to the Invitational too. So yeah, Central California, like multiple top cuts with this deck. So definitely want to highlight Carlos' deck here. For the comparison page, yes, Grafdigger's Cage is a good shout out to be cognizant of, and we'll definitely have to make sure that we have answers for it in the main deck. Jet Rebel Leader. I know a couple people have already talked about this in chat. When it attacks, look at the top 5 cards. You may put a creature with mana value. Why do we want a second slower Winota? Is my question, because it only cares about itself attacking. It has to be a value 3 or less. Like it's just a second strictly worse Winota, in my opinion, and like it's okay if we have a second version of it, I guess, if we're trying to snowball. But like, there's a lot of other 4-drops I'd rather be playing than Jet. Ether Vial is one that I've thought about quite a lot over the years. It's really difficult because it's really good in certain matchups and then really quite poor in others. I think for the time being, it's going to be a no for me, but I definitely want to test this at some point for sure. So I'll throw them in the sideboard here. Why does it say we're not on planes? Okay. Oh, because I believe they're on one more planes. That's why. Okay. Okay, so we got some depletion lands here, which I don't know that I'm a believer in the depletion lands for this deck in particular, but I definitely recognize where they're good. Gingerbread's one of our cards in our sideboard. Cathar Commando's in our sideboard. Yeah, Gingerbread's honestly one that it's going to be hard for me to justify not including. I don't really see the appeal of Rog because it's a 1 toughness creature. It definitely obviously has some appeal to it. Urza Saga is one I think I've been sleeping on, so we'll sideboard that a little bit. I think back in the day I used to not really like it as much, but I think times have changed enough where I think that's perfectly reasonable. Ocelot Pride's in our sideboard. The Pathway, sure. Vexing Bauble, we already talked about. I'm pretty low on it nowadays. Enlightened Tutor is in our sideboard. Recruit the cards in our sideboard. Heretic Cathar, Thalia. Creatures and non-basic lands your opponents control enter tapped. I always do forget that it does tempo out the lands like that. And I do see that Carlos is playing traditional Thalia as well. Another person playing Felia, so you're not gonna hear me complain about another Felia inclusion here. But yeah, non-basic lands, but specifically your opponents not having blockers is kind of hot. I don't dislike that. So that's something I'm gonna consider. It's a card I think I've traditionally slept on a little bit, but also it's just because it doesn't do quite enough all around, right? Yeah, this makes me feel good that we're back on Philia. Okay, cool. All right, cool. Checking out Carlos's list here. We'll that's really what we're gonna do there, and then the Arena Rector stuff I don't necessarily get. I believe it's just for Possibility Storm and Breath of Fury, which is spicy tech, but I'm not particularly sold on it. Okay. Shout out Carlos. So now we're gonna use Scoop Phases deck list and compare that one to ours. See if there's any other fun stuff there. Oh, I guess I should check things that Carlos isn't playing that might be interesting for us. Okay, Lena, which we already talked about, humming and hawing about quite a lot for our deck. Avalanche, which we just added. Sanctum Prelate, which I think is a little crazy, but fair enough. No Arcane Signet, interesting. Wow, no, yeah. I mean that makes sense. I guess I've never Arcane Signet. I think is actually a newer edition for me, historically speaking. Maybe I should just cut it. Interesting. Dang, okay, that's something I got to consider too. But yeah, Arcane Signet. Okay, interesting. Okay, now we're going to compare Scoop Phases deck list to our own. So Scoop is on Curse Totem, wild. Okay, noted. On a few more of the Goblin Makers, sure, on Howl Squad and stuff like that. On FOMO, which I don't believe in FOMO in this deck list because having Delirium's not actually something that's very good here. Power Balance is very funny to me. Yeah, that's so interesting because I don't necessarily dislike power balance. Cut Signet and play LED. LED is an interesting shot in Winota. I don't necessarily even disagree with it, but it's risky to say the least. It is risky. I just feel like you're gonna get blown out every time you go for something like that. Anyways, Power Balance is kind of spicy. I'm not gonna lie. I do think Power Balance is very, very interesting. That might be one to test moving forward in the future. I think that's something I'm very interested in exploring. Roaming Throne is too. I think. Yeah, Roaming Throne is definitely a very, very interesting exploration. There's another deck on Yuffie. What is this Yuffie doing? When it enters, gain control of an artifact for as long as you control Yuffie. Okay. I'm a little underwhelmed by it. I know Carlos, when we played in person, did mention that this card does put in work. I'm not sold, I guess, is kind of where I'm at with it. Skyclave is one of the ones in our sideboard. Smeller Bee. Other creatures you control have haste. When it attacks, you can discard your hand and draw cards equal to the attacking creatures. I mean, it's not bad. It's another one where I'm just like, okay, but it's another 4-drop, right? Like, we have to really, 4-drops have to be really good. You know? They have to be really freaking good. Deep Gnome is one that I've flirted with for a very long time, and this is, I don't know, seeing another person on it does make me interested in it. Grim Reaper Sprint I think is very, 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 very powerful, but I don't necessarily know that I'm sold on it being for this deck. I do love seeing the Final Fortune. That's one that I have debated playing Final Fortune and Winota for years. So good on Scoop for having the gall to go all in on a card like that, because I can't tell you how many times in Winota you end with a board state where you're like, one more turn and I would cook these fools, right? Like, it's so real. Yeah. Smeller Bee makes your humans go off with Breath of Fury. Can you explain that a little bit more, chat? I don't really understand what that means. Okay. So if you Anthem to give all of your creatures haste, then when you go to your next combat with Breath of Fury, then all of those are hasty attacking creatures. Sure. But then also, if you don't have enough non-creatures and you're not flipping into more humans, then that doesn't matter, right? Is kind of the idea. So Smeller Bee's cool. I'll at least pay the honor of putting it in the considering board, but I'm a little low. I will say this is 2 Thalia decks in a row. And actually two decks playing both Thalias, which Maybe, yeah, maybe it's just time for Thalia to come back. I'm actually so happy to consider that for sure. I'll make sure she's in the sideboard. Okay, cool. All right, and then finally, let's take a look at Wig Splitter with the Gold Sabertooth list. Oh, that was not what was supposed to happen. Control A. There we go. Boom. All right, and then from Sabertooth's list, yeah, I knew he was playing a lot of 0-drops, so there's a little bit of an aggro line there. The Lion's Eye Diamond, definitely wanna hit him up and see how he felt about the LED inclusion. I don't hate it, I really don't, because sometimes you just need to like. Oh, Scoop saying lightning is insane. Okay, it's been in my sideboard and it was something I was debating pretty heavily, so good to know, Scoop. Smothering Tides, probably a little bit slow in my opinion for Winota. There's a lot of dorky little guys in Gold's list that I'm not quite convinced on, but okay. I will say this is 3 for 3 on Ocelot Prides. So as I mentioned, Ocelot Pride was sort of like right as I was, like getting off of playing Winota for a long time. So I'm so down to throw in the Ocelot Prides. Another Smeller V list here. Everyone on Light and Tutor. Makes sense. Okay, cool. I think we've learned a lot, to be honest, by helping through and going through everyone else's list. I'm willing to take everyone's endorsement on Ocelot Pride. As I mentioned, it's been like, from what I always hear about this card, it's hit or miss, right? It's either insane or it's not. It's insane or it's not. Let's get that Enlightened Tutor back in, because I think I was sort of overcooking my thought process there for sure. How do you compare deck list on Moxfield? You just go over here to the more function and then you go compare. It's probably the tool that I use the most often, apart from making the decks themselves. It's insanely helpful. Definitely highly suggest it. Yeah, okay, down to 31 lands. Got to find a space for that Urza Saga. I really don't want to lose my command beacon, if I'm being honest. But I maybe could be convinced that Urza Saga does what Blinkmoth Nexus does if you really squint at it hard enough. So let's try that. I think I'm willing to make that gamble. Urza Saga is one that as I mentioned, I think if I built the deck like today, I probably would auto include it. But I think, yeah, I think back in the day, I was very resistant to that card. Someone did mention, oh yeah, Philia absolutely comes in. Even more so because someone in chat mentioned the Grafdigger's Cage thing, and I could not disagree. Okay, what is this thing people keep suggesting? Scuzzback. I know it's something that Cal and I mentioned on our set review. Scuzzback Scrounger. At the beginning of your first main phase, you may blight one if you do make a treasure. Huh. The beginning of your first main phase, you may blight one. If you do, make a treasure. I don't love the idea of shrinking our own creatures in this deck, if I'm being honest. I do like mana. Yeah. Urza's can grab Gingerbrute. Yeah, Gingerbrute was always going to come back in, I think, realistically. Scuzzback's interesting. Is it better than Arcane Signet? That was the question. Oh, okay. Huh. That is a good question, chat. Is a good question. Is this better than Arcane Signet? Probably. But is that an indictment against Arcane Signet and not a promotion of this card is the question. Yeah, we're gonna put our good friend Gingerfur back in the deck list. I'm kind of inspired by everyone playing Thalia again. I'm not gonna lie, I don't dislike that. Cathar Commando we talked about. I will say one thing that is I forgot to say about Cathar Commando that is an upside is that Cathar Commando under Rule of Law can be flashed in on someone else's turn, as opposed to Loran. But Loran is better if you flip her off Winota. And Cathar Commando is a 2-drop. I mean, I used to love Cathar Commando. Don't get me wrong. This is a case of like me being a little out of touch. Oh, I didn't add lightning yet. I thought I did. My bad. I thought I added that back already. And let me refresh the page a little bit. I'm not sure what Abdel combo loop you're referring to, chat, but I don't think whatever you think works. Because Charming Prince is a slow flicker effect. So it doesn't do anything. Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. We're getting somewhere. I'm down to 31 lands. Everyone who said I was crazy. So that's look at me. I'm making progress. Okay. um, was talking with a client the other day, and we were talking about how the Spirit of the Labyrinth and cards of this nature are potentially more important right now than ever. And the reasoning there is because these cards and these effects, essentially it's not even necessarily that like your opponents aren't drawing cards, which is letting them win, but it's also they aren't drawing cards, and therefore they're not able to make game decisions in which they're just waffling for like 30 minutes and doing nothing. That is really the other part of it. Is like when you're a Stax player, you do have the burden of your opponents just twiddling their thumbs and being like, oh, what should I tutor, and like blah, 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 and like removing choice from them is kind of big. And so I think Spirit of Labyrinth is like, yeah, I don't know honestly why I cut it from my last iteration of the deck list, but I think it makes sense and I think it deserves to be in here. Yeah, I think I'm trying to think about what I want to have as like the artifact and enchantment removal. It's either Cathar or Loran for the first iteration for sure. Like that part is not in question. It's just which one do I think is the upside is going to be better, I guess. Does Spirit affect Necropotence? No, it doesn't affect Necropotence. It does affect Necrodominance, which, yeah, I mean, the things that you have against the Necro decks are Grafdigger's Cage and Thalia's and things like that. Like that's what you have against those matchups, right? Speaking of which, I think I am going to put Thalia back in. Oh man, we're getting to the snug point. We're getting to every decision counts for quite a lot type of thing. What I will say is I think this is stronger than the Legion Loyalist style cards. It's not stronger than Legion Loyalist because it doesn't give you a hasty trigger when it attacks this turn, but what it makes up for that is it makes way more tokens, and it itself is a non-creature that will be attacking early. So I think this is actually, or Legion Warboss, pardon me. So I think I'm going to play Inox Strike Leader over Legion Warboss. I do want some sort of Red Blast effect. I think I'm going to play one, so I think Red Blast is where we're going to end up on that. And we're going to leave the Flare out for the time being, I think is the idea there for interaction purposes. I don't want to mess with having too many instants in the deck because that's quite not what this deck is doing, right? Just to going through chat and see if there's any other really big questions. Yeah, Cathar Commando doesn't do enough against Cradle decks. So that's not the matchups it's for. Red Stax is never going to be universal. Stax is never going to deal with every single matchup and every single problem, right? I think, yeah, as mentioned, Philia's one we're going to lock in there. Is it Dauntless Dismantler? Is it Loran? Is it Cathar Commando? As far as those things are concerned, I think it's Loran. I do. I think the enter the battlefield upside of flipping into it with a Winota makes me like Loran more, or am I just saying that and I'm wrong? Oh, dang, that's the question. Yeah, I think I like having the body that stays, though. I think I like having the body that stays, and Dauntless doesn't do enough, I think. So I think Loran's going to be our cut there, or our inclusion here. Okay, what are we looking at as far as all these things are concerned? Looking at 50 creatures, which is, like, in my opinion, probably about right. What are we looking at for humans versus non-humans? So for humans, we have one. We're going to do a human count here. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. 24 is great. 24 is like, that's pretty close to our sweet spot. So I'm feeling really good about that. That feels very, very solid. So yeah, big fan there. Any merit to continue? Not particularly. I think we're gonna try Arcane Signet out for a scuzzy boy. And if that sucks, then we can pretend this never happened. I don't know. Is that better than just playing Ornithopter Paradise, though, which is a flyer? I don't think so. I think we're going to swap. Yeah. I don't like Scuzzback. I don't think I like Scuzzback at all, to be honest. I think we're gonna keep Ornithopter Paradise in, and then just say, like, yeah, the turn it comes in, Summoning Sickness sucks, but it's a 0/2 flyer, and we'll be okay with that. For the time being. If that ends up being bad later on down the line, that's a risk I'm willing to take. 0 drops versus 3/2 goblins. Okay, yeah. The 3-drop goblins, I think, were definitely a thing that made a lot of sense when Mana Crypt was in the format, right? As soon as that went away, I think a lot of things changed. Chat asking about the Phyrexian sensor. Yeah, I still don't know. I think it's like actually way closer because realistically, Phyrexian sensor now only shuts down Loyal Apprentice, and then, like, as I mentioned, a little bit of awkwardness with I guess actually what it really does do is it shuts down our haste creatures, right? Yeah, I don't think we can afford Phyrexian sensor for the time being. But what do we have for haste creatures? We have Gingerbrute. We can dash a Ragavan. We don't have a ton. We have the Loyal Apprentice tokens. Okay. We have Slicer, which definitely gets a lot worse. We have the Rionia tokens. Yeah, I think there's enough stuff here where I'm not gonna play Phyrexian Sensor, but it's closer than it's ever been to being playable, I think, by a pretty considerable amount, which is really saying something. Gotcha. Yeah, I think did we stuck with Loran? I think that's the one we chose. Yeah. I feel pretty okay with that. I don't feel like amazing about it, but I feel pretty okay with that. I do sort of miss Alexios a little bit, but I don't necessarily know that that's what I want to use this last slot on, especially when you have a lot of new stuff. Speaking of which, I have this search up, which I think is kind of fun. We'll go through a little bit. I don't think we're gonna go too deep into here. See if there's any Boros humans that might be worth considering here. I don't think we're doing any Casey Jones nonsense. As fun as those might be. Renoa, sure, nothing here. Be interesting. I don't think there's any other Avatar stuff that really comes in makes a huge amount of impact here, right? We talked about like the Smeller Bee and stuff like that already. I don't think they're so impactful that we have to like go and change everything to play some of these cards. And this is just the humans. Yeah, Chad, I've looked at Lightstall Inquisitor before. I just don't think it does enough. I think it's just a little slow, unfortunately. Unless let me just double check and make sure I know what that card does, because I'm pretty sure it just Lightstall. Here we go. Yeah, 2-1 Vigilance. Yeah, it doesn't even have Evasion. When a creature enters, each opponent exiles a card from their hand and may play. Yeah, this is extremely slow. They get to choose as well. You don't even get to look at their hands. Yeah, we're not going to be playing a card like this. Okay, so far none of the Avatar stuff is really, speaking to us. Do think it's funny that Suki does buff warriors, which Winota is, but that's obviously not like it's funny and we should play that. It's funny, haha. But yeah, I think a lot of this is realistically like stuff that we could flip through a decent amount, but I don't necessarily think a lot of it is like flipping into the deck anytime soon. Yeah, Scuzzback can do both. I know. I am debating a lot on the Scuzzback versus Ornithopter thing. The big thing for me in Scuzzback is the fact that you can't tap the Scuzzback to play. Like you can't go Arcane Signet into, or Ancient Tomb into Scuzzback. You can't go Soul Ring into Scuzzback, right? Like that is my biggest issue with the card. Is not that curve, but it's the I have a bunch of colorless mana. How do I convert that into more mana curving out, right? Like that kind of stuff. Yeah, I don't necessarily know that we're going to see a whole ton. I did think about this guy actually for the deck. The fact that you can hexproof and indestructible your whole team, and it's a flash creature. But sadly, like I almost don't want to had this on a human. Like I almost wanted to have it on a non-human effect there, sadly speaking. But yeah, I think we're realistically like not gonna see a whole ton of new humans that have come out that I'm like, oh my god. I think we kind of covered those already. We sort of talked about a lot of them. With things like Avalanche, right? I think like if anything, Final Fantasy definitely probably buries cool cards for this deck in here, right? There's going to be a ton of random like, oh hey, this thing does with random combat and all that kind of stuff. But I think Avalanche was really and Lightning are probably the big pickups from that set. I'm curious. Then you make a treasure token. I don't think we have enough of that creature type. Was it Scout, Pirate, Rogue? There's no way, right? Yeah, we're looking. We got one Pirate. Okay. Yeah. No, okay. We do not have a lot of Scouts, Pirates, or Rogues. Okay, never mind. We had to check. Chat, we are definitely at the point where we're starting to go a little deep with some of these comments. One thing I will say that I'm actually really considering is Leonin. It's not Arbiter, is it? Yeah, it is Leonin Arbiter. Leonin Arbiter is one that I'm really considering, and in fact is one that I'm very likely to try out in the deck soon. I think this effect is very, very powerful. It's really, really strong for the tempo game. It's good anti-tutor hate. It is a 2/2 for 2, right? It is definitely very, very interesting. Yeah, chat, to answer the question, I think technically speaking, Winota is still considered fringe. There was a period of time where it was absolutely meta, right? That was pre-Bowmasters for sure. But yeah, nowadays I think it's very safe to consider it a very playable fringe deck. And maybe very playable is even dramatic because Stax is difficult, right? Like that's really the rub here, is that Stax is a really, really hard archetype. But all that to be said, Leonin Arbiter, I think we're sideboarding that. And notably, I mentioned a lot of activated ability decks are some of our tougher matchups, right? And that is honestly where we get even more endorsement to play things like Clarion Conqueror, right? I'm even more likely to look at things like Linvala moving forward, and I do kind of see Scoop's argument for playing Curse Totem in the 99, right? Because like that's hopefully going to the sideboard, yeah. Because yeah, we have a couple things that care about activated abilities, right? Like Giver of Runes, Hope of Ghirapur, and a couple of these like sack to protect our thing abilities, right? Boromir, Inox Strike Leader, Lena, right? Those are definitely all helpful abilities, but at the same time, like what's worse, us losing those or our opponents being able to activate their Kinnan, Sisseys, etc., right? Suppression Field in a few lists for that. Yeah, well, Suppression Field's just worse though, right? Am I crazy? Well, Suppression Field definitely has like matchups where it's better, right? But activated abilities, because it also hits artifacts, that's why. But artifacts and enchantments don't really have a lot of activated abilities that I'm worried about from a combo perspective per se. I guess this does shut down the Basalt Monolith combos, which is pretty funny because it costs 5 to untap the Basalt Monolith. which is comedic, to say the least. Yeah, so Linvala is one that you might have just caught me throwing to the sideboard. Historically, the biggest problem with Linvala has always been like, oh, it fights Winota for the 4-drop slot, like blah, 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 blah. Which is a good question. Yeah, it's a good question. I think Suppression feels very interesting, actually. I was a little skeptical, but I'm kind of interested in that way. I will say I do like Curse Totem shutting down mana abilities too, though. And I do think that, like, we're at the place where we're playing Clarion Conqueror, right? So like we're willing to take at least a little bit of anti-synergy, I do think that there's activated abilities that I would miss though, for sure. And that is something that I'm taking pretty heavily into consideration. And I also hate the idea that like you play a Curse Totem, you shut down the Rogthrast style deck, and then the blue farm just sort of runs away with it. But we've got like a million pre-baked answers for that type of card, right? Okay, I know one of the things we did mention earlier was the fact that we're concerned about cards like Grafdigger's Cage and stuff like that, which is decent to note. So for answers to that, we have the Loran, like we just mentioned, we have Arphelia, and we have Touch the Spirit Realm. Okay, so we do have main deck answers for that type of card, which is good. I do think that maybe Skyclave just ends up still being our last inclusion here, because I don't think that card ever becomes bad, right? And it's also just another nice, but there's so many cards I want to put in this deck, to be honest. There's so many beautiful cards to throw in this deck. Like, I do want to play an initiative creature at some point, right? Like, I do want, yeah, I don't know. We'll try Scuzzback, chat. That'll be one we'll give it a shot. I'll take out the Ornithopter for now. If it sucks, then it's going in the bin. I just really hate the idea of also shrinking our board, but there are creatures that I'm not going to care about as much. Having good power and toughness. Kinskier Sentry, I think someone else in chat called this out. Like, I just don't think that card does enough for this deck. I just really don't. I don't really see what it's doing that actually propels this deck's game plan forward. A part of me wants to also test out that Ether Vial tech from Carlos's list. I don't think anyone else is. Oh, Scoop was on it too. Interesting. Scoop, I don't know if you're still in chat, but I'm curious to hear if you have any thoughts on the Ether Vial inclusion. I kind of want to give it a shot. I do, because it's so good if it's in the early hands. I know Wizened Mentor keeps being brought up. I think that card's way too slow for this deck. Oh, this is already in here. I think we're gonna give Ether Vial a shot. And if it sucks, it sucks. That's okay. Oh, because we cut the Kinscare. And then we're gonna go and put that Skyclave Apparition in. Cool. Feel good about that. Someone in chat asking about Mox Opal count if we add out the artifact lands. It's a really good question, because normally you want, like, in my opinion, like 18-ish artifacts to have consistent Mox Opal in the early game, right? So let's count that, because okay, so we have our 6, right? And these are all 6 that are 1 or below, right? So we have 6 there. We go to 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. It goes for quite a minute. And then, like, the incidental treasures and stuff like that. Yeah, so we have about 15 artifacts in the deck. That to me is even with, like, adding the 2 artifact lands, is a little low for a Mox Opal count. It's close though. It does feel very close, funny enough, for a deck with only 6 traditional artifacts in it. But yeah, 15 is definitely close, especially because they're all 2 or less, right? Now, if Scuzzback Scrounger is another traditional artifact, that actually makes that even better, as opposed to getting these, like, shitty tutors every turn. I believe E-Tutor we put back in. Yeah, land tutors in there. No, of course. Artifact lands were on top of that, right? That was part of the initial calculation, right? So if we do make Scuzzback Scrounger, that's actually not bad. I would be willing to cut a land for Mox Opal if we did. Okay, so what if Scuzzback becomes... How many people played Arcane Signet? None here. Tim was on it. Okay. We're also just, like, that harder folds us into our own Clarion Conqueror, though. Yeah, I don't know about that. Interesting. Yeah, it's crazy that these other folks have, like, yeah, so little, like, actual ramp, but I guess it makes sense, right? And did I put the Ocelot Pride back in? I think I did. Yeah, it's in there. Okay. Crazy stuff. Let's see here. I mean, yeah, as I said, we could technically afford to try that package out. It would not be the worst thing in the world. Is Mox Amber playable in this deck? That's a good question. How many legends do we have? So we have Winota plus none here, none. Ragavan, okay. Philia, Thalia, Tataru, Avalanche. Yeah, the problem is that, like, we have a bunch of legends, but they're, like, on the higher end of the curve, right? So that's a little awkward. We do have legends, though, right? Like, it's not an insignificant amount. Even getting up to the 3 drops, we have legends here. I have a feeling it's probably a dead card more often than I would like, though. I'd be willing to try Mox Opal for a land here. Okay, so if that's the case, then let's just cut maybe like one of our more sketchy MDFC removal spells here, which is Razorgrass Ambush. So boom, that goes out. So that becomes a Mox Opal. Okay, I can get behind testing this for sure. And then we put the Ornithopter of Paradise back in. If that's the case. So that gives us up to 16, plus we need to find 2 cuts for, let me just double check that we have the math there correctly. So that's 7 plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So go to 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Okay, that's including Mox Opal though. And then we have the 2 lands. Okay, yeah, I can get behind this. It might be bad, but I can get behind it. Okay. Quicksilver will be good support for Amber in the future. Oh, yeah, for later down the line for sure. Yeah, no, I see the Chancellor of the Annex conversation. I don't think Chancellor is going to be good enough. Yeah, I just think it's a little bit too slow for the meta. Sekenzin I like as our uncounterable body maker. I do think Iganjo is a little weak, but I'm not down to cut it quite yet. We can cut 1 basic plains for an Ancient Den for sure. Although we are a Blood Moon deck, and so cutting basics is maybe a little tricky. No, I don't think I feel good about that, actually. Oh, that went to the sideboard too. I think we want to add another plains back. I don't like cutting the plains there. Yeah, yeah, okay. Gotta figure out where we can afford these 2 land cuts. The Arena of Glory, I did make a whole point about how it's not going to be useful in every matchup, but I think it's kind of free. That's the problem with it. It's like, yeah, I don't really see a downside of playing it. Maybe we just take the sacrifice on Shatter Skull Smashing. Because realistically, I only ever go for this like 1 out of every like 30 games, and we have better removal nowadays. So yeah, that's fine. We'll sideboard the Shadow Skull Smashing. Did Skyclave? I don't think Skyclave made it back in. Yeah, it's because, oh no, it did. Okay, cool. So Shadow Skull Smashing is going to go out for a Great Furnace. Very different format now that Dockside is not around. Okay, and then we are 1 land cut short at this point. What land do I feel the most comfortable losing? Not a lot of them, to be honest. Maybe one of the fetches. Maybe we don't need, or maybe just a 5-color land too. No, I think I'm more comfortable losing a fetch, I think, nowadays. Careful with Ancient Den and Clarion Conqueror. Yeah, that's really fair. If we go heavy into this Mox Opal thing, we really blow ourselves out with them. With the Conqueror. Yeah, I think this is a cute idea. I think this is for a different version of this deck. That's a really good point, chat. Yeah, I'm actually feeling pretty good about that. So let's not overinvest in the Mox Opal thing. Okay, so if that's the case, then we're gonna go back. We're gonna try Ornithopter out for the Scuzz. Okay. Yeah. I think we're just trying so hard to make this package work. Mox Opal gets cut. We go back up to a 31st land in the form of Blinkmouth, probably. Great Furnace, sideboard. Ancient Den, sideboard. Okay. We have our 3 plains. Pathway goes back in. Blinkmouth goes back in. Cool. Yeah, I feel better about that. Yeah. No, I think that this makes more sense. I think thinking about the Conqueror and stuff like that, like I think we just have to make some considerations there. I think it's just too deep into one substrat of the for a Mox Opal, right? Which is just like not worth it. Yeah. Honestly, so let's move the things out to the sideboard. So that's gonna go considering. I feel pretty good about not being on Talon Gates, but we'll leave it in the sideboard for now. Benevolent, I kind of miss a little bit, but it's okay. I think I miss Mother of Runes more, hypothetically. Bobble, I feel good about being off of. We're gonna keep Wild Slash in there just as like a meta consideration. No Talon Gates just because Talon Gates for 4 mana is like, when are we ever holding up 4 mana in this deck, right? Like playing as land drop is like fine, right? But realistically, every other land here I think I like a little bit more for various reasons, one or the other. Oh, you know what? That's why we didn't cut the Needle Verge. We cut the MDFC land. That's why. Okay. We're gonna actually put the Needle Verge back out to the sideboard because I want the Shatter Skull back in. Where are you? Okay, great. Boom. And I'm okay without the 3 damage one, the Razor Grass. That's perfectly fine to not be in the deck. Okay, I'm not worried about Angraths. Wandering Rescuer I definitely think is worth considering. And I'm just gonna now narrow down the sideboard to cards that I'm like really debating on quite heavily. I think Warboss is gonna stay just as like and yeah, these are gonna stay as a matter of consideration. The Talisman can go. This Kinscare I feel good about not being on. Okay, everything else I feel like makes sense being in here. So these are all like, yeah, we're gonna narrow it down to just like stuff that should really, really heavily be considered as we're sort of moving through this. I think. Oh, we did get Starting Town sense here, but I think I'm okay not being on Starting Town because that coming in tapped later on is gonna feel pretty rough. Yeah. Chad, I think you. Jonathan, we do have Raph and Leo in here. It's right here in the night done. So yeah, this is I think we have for the deck list right now. The next thing I start doing when I'm locking in a deck list like this, I think we're gonna go in and we're gonna look at some hands and just see like how clean they all look, all that kind of stuff, and then go from there. Cool. That's a turn 1 Stax piece, turn 2 Winota. That feels pretty good. Plus turn 1 Stax piece that I, as mentioned, like feel very good about in the current metagame. Great. Cool. Sick. Go there for the Mox Diamond. Get that Spirit of Labyrinth down turn 1. Nobody's drawing more than 1 card. Play our Lotus Petal. Now we can hold up our Wurm's-Chant or threaten Winota on turn 2. There's also a reality where you sandbag this Lotus Petal because you don't think the Wurm's-Chant is going to be relevant on turn 1. And if that's the case, that lets people not know that you're going Winota on turn 2. So that's really a case of like, to be honest, there are very few times where I feel like I would need an Wurm's-Chant turn 1. But you never know. You never know with these things, right? So I think that's something worth considering for a sandbag. But then turn 2, oh my god, that's awesome. You go Lotus Petal, Cavern naming human, boom. Get that Winota down on turn 2. Send in those attacks. Let's look at our top 6 here. All right, we got 1 human, so we hit no matter what. Great. All right, well, not the most impactful one, but we will take an Esper Sentinel for sure. And put the rest of these on the bottom of our library. Moving into turn 3, let's say we get to draw 1 extra card off Esper Sentinel. Oops. Going in, okay. Yeah, we're still in a case here where, yeah, okay. I'm definitely seeing, we do have a little bit of, we have a little bit of extra padding with some of these lands. So this is potentially noting that I'm maybe potentially being a little more flexible on cutting some, right? Let's go again with the flips. 5, 6. Dranith is a card I'm never upset about hitting, but like the thing is, we're also not pivoting towards a win so far with this flip. So I feel like kind of medium about how this is going so far. Okay, so let's take a look there. I think also something worth considering too is that there is a potential to have too few like big payoffs in the flip department, but I don't necessarily think that's where we're at. That doesn't feel like it to me. There's a world where we could do like 1 more. I'm actually going to run that comparison now that we have 100 cards with everybody else again. See where we're doing as far as that, especially that part is concerned, like as the big flip payoff here. Okay, so our list, we have couple big payoffs, actually more, not on Jet, but okay, they're on Angrath's Marauders. Okay, so very comparable numbers of like big hits. Same thing here. We'll do another comparison here. Boom. About 24 cards different than Scoop's list, and a lot of the same stuff. Okay, cool. Oh, the Roaming Throne does look so cool. I want to. That's just a card I like, and I want to play in more decks, but I haven't been able to. Chat saying hot take Sarah Ascendant is not good enough. I think that is a scalding hot take. That card has individually won me more games in decks like this than I think so many cards. I think Sarah Ascendant is insane. so yeah, respectfully gonna insanely disagree there. That is a scalding hot take, I think, for Winota. All right, we're gonna go back to a little bit of playtesting, see if we can get there. Yeah, I'm a little bit in the way, but that's fine. We'll just move me over here a little bit. Boop. Make it a little smaller. There we go. Great. All right, we're jumping back in. This hand is pretty decent. I mean, that's a turn 1 to Taru. Turn 2, I mean, you can exile any number of cards here, right? Like, I don't hate the turn 1 to Taru. Hope that we hit a land drop and then go for the turn 2 Winota. This is a hand where I think you could definitely get messed up by going too deep into your own Clarion Conqueror and like potentially pushing that too early, because then you only have a single mana source that works with Clarion Conqueror, right? Another very good reason to consider that 31 land thing, right? But yeah, I think we're okay for the time being. Okay, cool. Happy to move on from there. Another hand here. Okay, finally have a hand that doesn't feel, well, I mean, honestly, I was gonna say it doesn't feel like a keepable 7, but this is another turn 1 to Taru, turn 2 Winota. Oh, we need to hit no, because we don't even need to hit a land drop, because yeah, that's crazy. Why do we keep getting these hands? Okay, we're gonna look for one that isn't turn 1 to Taru, turn 2 Winota. Okay, here we go. We have a slower hand. I would even consider this realistically, just because of how good Archon of Emeria is, if I'm being honest. Yeah, wow, these hands have all been pretty decent. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not upset about any of that. Oh my god, and then hitting the Cavern for the turn 3 uncounterable Winota is crazy. Yeah, turn 1 there, play the Mana Vault, sure, untap. Turn 2, get the Archon down, great. Okay, good, just in case we need to have the SWAT up, we have that too, sure. This is a crazy curve. Great, we get our Commander down, attack with Archon, look at the top 6, we get Alina. That's okay. Sure. I don't think. Yeah, I mean, we have an Archon down. I'm getting Alina here, and then we're gonna get 2 bodies. Oop. No, we get 3 bodies for each non-token creature you control, not each other. Oh my god. Yeah, can I have that curve in the tournament? That'd be sick, actually. So that'd be pretty cool. I don't hate that. I don't hate that at all. Okay. I mean, I think these hands are probably performing. I don't know what it is lately, but every time I go to do mulligans on these apps, I feel like they look absolutely insane, and then I go to like bring it to a tournament, it's like, okay, there's the realistic hands, or like as soon as I shut the camera off. Yeah. All right. Cool. I mean, I'm happy with it. Right. This is feels good to update this deck. We spent about 2 hours on it. For what feels like I mean, we did a healthy amount of conversation and changes and stuff like that. Did get a question in chat. Clarion does not affect Simian Spirit Guide. It's because it stops permanence, right? So the hand is a different zone essentially. Is it worth it to get on more pay 1 effects, Sphere or Resistance, Glow Rider, stuff like that? I think there have been times in the meta, but honestly, once again, our tough matchups right now are not going to be those decks. Are the blue farms and the Rog Size and decks like that. Like we have our main deck answers for those pretty early too, right? Like we have Aethersworn Canonist, and we have Deafening Silence, and we have stuff like that, right? Yeah, I think all of those things are kind of nice for us. Also, I think one that we didn't talk about today that I do want to put in the sideboard is actually Damp Sphere. Dampening? No, it's Damping Sphere, right? Yeah. I always get that one right. But that is one to consider just because of the fact that like it hits the Cradle decks and it hits the Storm decks too, which is kind of nice. Yeah, I think. Well, so yeah. Once again, I don't think Cradle decks are a bad matchup per se, but it is Thrasios, Kinnan, Sisay style decks, I think, that are going to, historically speaking, Kinnan especially is by far Winota's worst matchup. I think that is like the easiest parallel for me to draw there. It's like the Winota is just a terribly atrocious matchup. With Kinnan, because Kinnan flips into things like Hull Breakers and stuff like that. Actually, I think modern Kinnan is actually a little bit weaker against it, but at the same time, they just play a lot of stuff that we don't get to stop as much, right? Which is why, having effects like potentially Linvala as a consideration, right? Having things like the Clarion Conqueror in the modern version is nice, right? Honestly, if we had more Spirited Labyrinths, I would be playing those. I wish, things like Razorkin Needlehead did more. If this was 2 damage, this would be crazy, right? But not even decks that go bigger, but decks that like don't care about the like rule of laws and like stuff like that are really where we struggle. And then that is actually the nice part against the Rogar Thrasios decks, is like eventually they do need to put a certain amount of spells on the stack, right? And so it depends on how early you can get a rule of law down against those. Chad asking, how does Winota project into the Rog Ishai matchup? That is one of, in my opinions, like the easiest matchups that I could not care less about. First of all, I think that deck is kind of not real. I think it's like a playable cEDH deck, but I think people are overhyping the hell out of that deck, and I think it's only overhyped because people took it as a meta attack, and it was smart to attack the meta with that deck. But that is one of those lists that folds to Stax so easily that it is like pure comedy, right? Because its only win condition is Breach, right? That's actually real. It's meant to parasite off mid-range matchups, right? Like it is a deck that is specifically designed not to be able to handle a diverse metagame, right? So if you show up with a Stax deck, it looks like a wet piece of paper, right? It's just not doing anything. But yeah, so I mean, those hands have looked pretty good. I feel really good about a lot of our changes. I feel like we definitely have a lot of stuff in and out. Things like Avalanche and stuff like that make me feel really excited. Raph and Leo feels awesome to finally put into the deck list. And I'm excited to see what happens next. I want to play her soon. I really do. I got to find out the right tournament to do so. But it's, I think it's going to be really, really, really exciting. Yeah, the Ragi Shy deck, I would not consider it a control deck. I think that's maybe someone trying to pitch it to you wrong. It is a parasitic deck, right? And that's the idea. Someone in chat asked, do we run Containment Priest? Containment Priest would make our deck not function. Yes, so actually it's funny. I'm glad you brought that up, K-Standish. Magebane Lizard was one in Rug of Smothering that I did want to talk about, because I am not sure how I feel about these cards. Because the thing is, they're worse if our rule of law effects are on the battlefield, right? But does that matter? Like, is it just another one that also puts another like trigger on the stack and all that kind of stuff? I think it's all I don't know. I think it's not bad, right? Like, even if they only cast one spell per turn, it's like, all right, cool, we're adding a clock to the matchup. It is a flying body, right? Like, I think they're really, really worth considering. They're definitely cards that I am like, yeah, moving forward, talking about. Calling this deck is bait. No, so I don't even plan on clipping talking about Ragi Shy. I genuinely think the deck is kind of a joke. But also, like, where are the results from this deck, right? Like, it top 16 a tournament where it got 1 win in 4 draws, in which I know for a fact, like I've been told by players who were at the building, that the players won their match and then sat down and asked for IDs for like the rest of the tournament, right? Like, I don't think calling a deck that's in tournament has won like 2 games an amazing deck list. That feels kind of crazy. That the reaction to this deck has been so insane. But yeah, all right, jumping back to Rug of Smothering and Lizard and stuff like that. I think these cards are very interesting. I think they're very much worth considering. I'm glad we brought them up, especially because Rug is like, it's cast a spell, right? When anyone casts any spells whatsoever. it deals 1 damage, right? So like, I don't know, it's definitely worth considering. And yeah, so cool stuff there. And then Mage Bane, I think I'm going to put in the sideboard as well. I got to double check the text on Mage Bane, but I think this card is actually better. Like, I think it's slept on. And the 1/4 is the crazy part. Whenever a player casts a non-creature spell, it deals damage equal to the number of non-creature spells they've cast this turn. So it does just do that damage. I don't know. I think it's very close, those two. And to be honest, like, what I will say is I like Mage Bane Lizard more than like Kinsgale Sentry, whatever the heck that card's called. It's close, and I think if we can find space for those two cards, I'm definitely interested in sleeving them up. I think they're just good. The Lizard, especially, just a 1/4 body. I'm actually kind of surprised that the other pilots haven't represented those cards too, because I think just adding more damage to the table, applying early clocks, all that kind of stuff, like it's none of it's bad, right? So yeah, those are cards I definitely have to chew on a little bit. The problem is they're not hard stops, right? And I guess the last thing I want to check with 51 creatures, what is our human to non-human split up right now? So we have Esper Sentinel, so human number 1. Nope. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. So of our 51 creatures, 24 are human. And what I really like is we have the top end here, right? Like that's where all the humans are, right? It is all up here in this top end. And to that, to me, speaks to this curve being correct for this deck. We can use the highlighter tool of Scryfall syntax to quick count too. How do you do that? What? I'm unaware of that tool. Huh. Highlighter. Wait, what? This is a thing? I never knew this. That's sick. Oh my goodness. Yo, what? That's so cool. Thanks, chat. I did not know. That's so nice to have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. Yeah, 24. We got the correct. Yeah. Sweet. Okay, cool. Thanks, highlighter tool. Thing I had no idea existed. Oh man, Moxfield's got so many cool features. Okay. That's awesome. It counts 32 because I'm assuming it's counting our commander and the sideboard as well. Yeah, it's definitely doing that. Okay, that is good to know too as well. All right, sick. But yeah, I think I'm very happy with where the list looks at. I'm genuinely now going to be contemplating, I think as soon as stream ends, where like if I can try and squeeze the lizard in somewhere, because I do think just a 1/4 that's going to punish your opponent's life totals is like so not bad to have access to in the early game. And then Rug being a 1/3 flyer too. Oh man, that's awesome. Okay, let's reset that so I stopped highlighting stuff. But yeah, very, very happy about all this. And yeah, thank you all for joining me for this exploration. I think we're gonna wrap things up right about now. Yeah, folks are interested in all that kind of stuff. If anyone's interested in exploring your decks, all those types of things, or if you're interested in jumping into cEDH at the next level, all that kind of stuff, it's kind of plug the fact that I do cEDH coaching full time. If you're interested in those things, hit me up at comedianmtg@gmail.com or any of the places that I leave in the description of all my videos. Thank you all so much for joining me here today. Really appreciate it. I've been having fun jumping on live a little bit more often lately. So this is something we'll be doing every probably maybe once or twice a month. Maybe not every week, but definitely something really fun. So thanks for all joining me. I appreciate y'all. Catch you next time. Peace.